Call the meeting to order. Clerk Smith, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxon,
Present.
Mayor Brown,
Present.
Councilmember Sweet,
Present.
Councilmember Tucson,
Present.
Councilmember D Simmons, Councilmember J Simmons,
Present.
Councilmember King. 5 present, we have quorum.
Okay, please rise as you're able for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I will entertain a motion for agenda approval. Support. So moved. Thank you. I'm assuming there are no additions or anything, but giving space for that. All right, seeing none, all in favor of the agenda as approved, well, as presented, sorry, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will get right to it. Director Wessler, I believe you have a presentation for us on the needs of the Department of Public Services. So good evening.
Evening.
I'm going to start with a little bit of a disclaimer. What got posted to the packet and was posted on the website is basically a pared down version of a presentation I'd previously prepared. I've added some slides to this one to explain some other points. Those slides are marked with a star in the upper left corner, and I've made it available for posting after the meeting. So without further ado, let's hit slide 1. So first, we're going to go a little bit into the goals of the community. So the master plan, council adopted goals, all of that, then into what the DPS does, then into some information about the DPS facility, the options we identified, and the next steps we identified. Next. So master plan guiding values, there are 10 guiding values here, but number 1 is safety comes first. The other ones are, of course, very important, but that is the one that is most relevant to our discussion tonight. Next. The 2023 council goals that were adopted in February. The 2 ones that are most relevant to this discussion are retain and attract staff, and also to invest in our infrastructure. And those 2 goals have fed into the public services goals next, which are to continue to improve recruitment and retention by improving worker safety, continue to provide emergency and after hours response, provide timely and efficient fleet services, provide continuous and predictable service to the public, and all so on and so forth. Skip those next 2 because those are just reiterating. And then into the DPS org chart. So DPS has 27 employees when we're fully staffed. Currently, we're down 3. But of those employees, 21 of them are members of the TPOAM union. The DPS does quite a bit of work in the community, and a lot of it is the sort of work that people only notice when something goes wrong. So we handle the solid waste in the community, the parks, a lot of administrative work with the capital improvements, transportation, sustainability, grants and project management, right-of-way management, emergency planning and response. We usually partner, of course, with fire and police on those as well. Facilities in the fleet. Next. So we're going to go into the facilities that make up the DPS yard. Next. So I've broken these into sort of 2 categories. There are facilities that have a high priority need. And then there are facilities we'll talk about a little bit later on that have, you know, a little bit more life left in them, but still have some shortcomings. Next. So the major concern is the main building. This is a central building in the DPS yard. It consists of 3 main parts: a central bay that was constructed in the 1800s as a coal barn, and 3 additions. 1 set was added in the early 1960s, and then there was a concrete masonry addition in the late 1960s. This building houses basically all of the operations of the DPS except for the office. So it's vehicle and equipment services, our signs and signals and parking meter maintenance, parks and facilities, carpentry and storage, our welding shop, wash bay, just about everything. Next slide. This is how it's sort of broken out inside. Currently, the sections marked A, H, and G are closed off and not used. They've been emptied. Overall, the building has no fire suppression, no smoke or vapor detection, no exhaust fans or other vapor control. There's no emergency exits. There's inadequate emergency lighting. The majority of the overhead doors don't have a manual release. So in the case of a power loss, you have to use a forklift to open those doors. There's no restrooms or emergency shower, and there's no backup power. So there's no backup generator. So, as I said, this main bay was constructed in 1800s for coal storage. It was never originally built for human occupation. It was adapted to DPS likely in around the 1960s or 70s and put into continuous use since then. It has served as sort of our main area for passenger vehicles and equipment, a lot of part storage, the mechanic's office, and equipment storage and workspace. Next page. The immediate issues that we've identified here has been a failure of the roof structure. We've had two sets of structural engineers out to assess it, OHM Advisors and Wagner Engineering. OHM has come out twice, once last year and once this year, and has identified further failures from their initial assessment. The roof structure of this central bay is interconnected with the roofs to the east and the west, as well as the concrete masonry unit addition, although to a lesser extent there because that's a flat roof. The slope of the roof on the wings contributes to ice damming and ponding because the slope is not sufficient. We've vacated this section as of last week in advance of snow season. And the north overhead door shown in that picture there has not been used for about 3 months. And you can see it red tagged in that picture because it is entirely supported by one of those trusses, and that truss has begun to deflect. Apart from these major issues and immediate issues, there's also coal dust embedded in the walls, and it's a constant nuisance to our workers. The concrete floor is uneven. There are 3 different surfaces. There's pitting, there's spalling. It's been filled in with cold patch a number of times. The garage doors aren't actually really tall enough to accommodate our vehicles. Also, since the building is set lower than the rest of the surroundings, we're approaching it at an angle, and you have to have the vehicle perfectly lined up in order to actually get in. And then the hoist that we have for our smaller vehicles limit your ability to actually pull through from one end of the building to the other. So next slide, you have a few more pictures. Next. There you can see the floor a little bit better. You can see some of the areas of cold patch and then some of the differing areas and the trip hazards, basically. Next. At the far end, you can see the overhead door that's been out of service for about 3 months. We're going to go around that building in a clockwise fashion. So on the northeast side, we have the patch bay. It's part of the East Wing addition. The bird's nest in the wall between the spray foam insulation and the wooden siding. There's a picture of a bird in that lower right-hand corner. And on the left side, I discovered this morning. Thank you. There is a raccoon that lives there. He's dug in through the open air traffic control storage area and made himself a lovely little nest there. Also comes in through the roof sometimes. That's one of those pictures as well, right next to the heater that is too close to the spray foam insulation and has toasted spray foam insulation. Next slide. This is the traffic control storage area. It's another part of that eastern wing. The roof is interrelated with that main bay. The structural posts are completely rotted through. Not 100% sure what's holding it up, maybe force of habit, but there are roof leaks and it's inadequate for our needs. There's no functional lighting, and this area not only allows the raccoon or raccoons access to the other parts of the building, it likely allows other vermin to access that main bay because it is completely open. Next. So we're moving into the concrete masonry unit addition now. This is the northern bay. This is the garage where most of our vehicles get their service because this is the area that has the large in-ground hoist. So this is currently occupied by our mechanics. There is not a lot of room to maneuver there. And in fact, in recent years, we added a little doghouse to the outside so that we could actually service the rear axles of some of our trucks. Next. This is the welding bay or fab bay. It's part of the that concrete masonry unit addition. It's currently occupied by just about everybody right now. It serves as the mechanic's office as well as where our science and signal shop is currently. It's really only accessible by that roll-up doors into the adjoining units. Next one. And this is our wash rack. Wash rack is important to our vehicle maintenance. Again, it is small for modern vehicles, but it is required for our vehicle maintenance and it is currently occupied. Next. So turning the corner on the west side, this is the northwest portion of the building. This was our parks department. In the summer, it's where we keep our lawnmowers and it can do some light service on our lawnmowers. In the winter, it is where we keep our plows, our small sidewalk plows and snow clearing equipment, and service those as well and keep them warm and functional. It's vacated due to the roof concerns. So this roof here is tied in, of course, to that main bay roof, but this area had been regularly occupied. Next. This is part of our signs and signal shop. Again, the same concerns as the Parks Department. It was our working area. It was where those workers were housed, but we have closed it due to those roof concerns. Next. And finally, the fuel pumps kind of sum up our immediate concerns. The issue here is that they frequently stop working on hot days because it gets too hot. This is also an issue at the fire department, but they actually have some shade trees there, so it's less of an issue. Generally, the months of July, we have to make sure that we get July and August, we have to get our fuel in the morning because by the afternoon, no dice. We also still use a paper ticket system in order to track our fuel use. The fire department has a more modern system, a Fuel Master system. And then the other great thing about these fuel pumps is there's, again, no backup power generation. So when power is lost, it takes us several days actually to get them back up and running because usually the computer that controls the pumps does not work. And we have to get an electrician out often, and then also the fuel pump maintenance technician. And the salt barn, this is the one that everybody probably can see from the road. It was constructed in the 1990s. We've had structural assessments performed on it, and they recommend demolition. So that brings us to the next point. Next slide, please. We've heard from our workers and we've heard from their union that upgrading these facilities is of the utmost importance and a very urgent issue. Next. Now, those facilities that don't have urgent issues but still have shortfalls here are the pole barn, the office, and the truck port. The pole barn is to the north of the site. It was constructed in the 1980s. It holds a lot of their equipment. However, it was constructed atop the Owen Drain. So the Owen Drain is basically a creek that was undergrounded in the early 1910s. It is a very large drain, and you are actually not allowed to build on top of storm drains like that. It has a dirt floor, so that is not conducive to actually storing much of anything because you get mud and everything. It also allows raccoons, again, to set up shop. And of course, it is very difficult for actually us to access along the back where you see the trees growing because it was constructed quite close to the fence. Next. Next. Okay. This is the office building. It's small. It's actually our best condition building, but it has a combination break room, locker room, and kitchen / meeting room. That is all one room. There's not a private locker room for a crew to change in, to be comfortable in. There is a office, basically the open floor plan office that is shared with our office staff and with their supervisory staff. There's no place for us to store our uniforms, and there's actually no dedicated storage space at all outside of the women's restroom. Next. And here's our truck port. The truck port was constructed in 2015. It is a great place to keep our trucks plugged in and shielded from inclement weather. It's where our solar panels are hosted. Unfortunately, when it was constructed actually a little too short for most of our trucks. So our more expensive trucks actually stick out a good 3-5 feet. So in summary, the location is great. It is good to have an entrance from 2 streets. It's a great location to access the city overall, especially for snow removal and mowing. You can just hop on a mower, pop into Frog Island and keep on going. It's on a separate DTE circuit and water main from the other emergency facilities, which is great during weather emergencies in particular, or even during downtown construction. However, there's a high risk of structural failure that leads to effectively unlimited risk in terms of worker safety and liability. Not having our fuel pumps function consistently in the summer affects our service levels. Not having a standby generator for emergency also affects our service levels. The history of use as an industrial site since the 1800s makes significant redevelopment challenging and the current use potentially problematic. We do have a phase 1 that's underway. We started that at the beginning of the year. The motorized gate, just to add insult to injury, does actually freeze up and stop working occasionally in the winter, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning. The humidity issues make storing items very difficult and keeping them in good repair very difficult. There's a hydrant and a utility pole right in the middle of our main maneuvering space for our trucks. You can see in the picture, kind of underneath the little zoom window, there is a fire hydrant and it is surrounded by about 8 bollards, only half of which are still standing. So those are sort of the current issues. As far as reaching the city's future goals, we don't have a place to locate propane fueling tanks or electric chargers. Our garage is currently set up, cannot safely accommodate the service needs of electric vehicles or propane fueled vehicles. We cannot serve as an emergency response center in most common emergencies. If we lose power, we're no good to anybody. We're unable to add staff due to the limitations of our current office area, and we're unable to add equipment due to our limitation in storage. So next slide. We are technically capable of fixing each repairable issue, but it would not address the underlying issues of the layout and the space limitations, nor would it address the contamination issues. And the scale of repairs would require temporary relocation, which would incur significant costs in and of itself. Testing and remediating or performing due care of the expected contamination issues would also require significant work and investment and temporary relocation, incurring significant and unknown costs. Correcting the layout and space limitations would require significant work and investment, and relocation, much longer, would trigger the due care and remediation and also trigger significant unknown costs. So relocating DPS as soon as possible, either temporary or permanently, is the only option to continue operations regardless of course of action regarding our current location. Next. So this is a slide that was altered but not added. So this kind of goes into our site requirements. In order for maximum efficiency, we need all of the functions on one site. We need safe, code compliant buildings, and we need to be within the city or immediately adjacent. I go in a little to the actual square footage requirements, but the timelines we're estimating to construct new, it would probably be about 2 to 5 years just to get the funding together, a contract together, design together, et cetera, depending upon the location. To move, less than a year, depending again on location. The timeline would vary depending upon how many alterations to the site and the building were needed, and if the move-in could be phased. And of course, time is of the essence. So a little bit about our search process. We did the initial structural assessment in July of 2022. I wasn't aware of it until about October, November of 2022. We've been working on alternatives and looking at ways to mitigate these issues since late fall of 22. We had a second structural assessment from a second opinion in May of 2023. And we've been looking casually for alternative properties since about May, but only working with the broker since about August. So the two options out there are to lease or to purchase. Most commercial leases would be a pretty extensive length of time. We'd have to put together significant money into most properties, and then because those improvements would be with the property, we wouldn't necessarily recoup the investment if we ever had to move on, or if our lease expired and we chose not to continue. But if we purchase, we could resell if the move were temporary, and there's at least some potential to recoup any investment. So here I go a little into the relocation options and the cost considerations for cost overall. A lot of people have questions about how industrial real estate is valued. So there's generally four main methods. There's a cost approach, income approach, sales comparison approach, and gross rent approach. Income approach and gross rent approach refer to the income that one would get from the property, which aren't relevant here. Sales comparison approach is really when you're talking about properties that are apples to apples or have a very large statistical sample from which to draw. That's not really appropriate here since our needs are very specific and our geographic area is very limited. So we were working with the cost. So what is the cost of the alternative, essentially? So there were some comps in the packet. So of the more than 20 industrial properties in that list that were sold within the last 3 years in Washtenaw County, only 9 were in Ypsilanti or Ypsilanti Township, none were in Superior Township. Of the 9 that were in the list, 2 were missed opportunities right adjacent to the DPS yard. Neither of them were officially ever listed for sale. And that is true of a lot of commercial properties. They may not necessarily hit the market. A lot of it is word of mouth between the brokers and their agents. So by working with the broker, that allowed us sort of access to this network of properties that were for sale, but not necessarily listed. But of those 9, only 3 were about the right lot size range, so a little bit more than 3 acres, and all of which were in Mansfield. All of them sold in 2022. Each of them had unique circumstances around their sale. I know at least 2 of them were distress sales, and one I believe was somebody was retiring sort of sale. And one of them is about 25% floodplain, and one is very linear and adjacent to residential, so not a great candidate for a DPS yard where we conduct 24/7 operations, frequently during storms and frequently with very loud vehicles moving large amounts of salt and backing up frequently. The beeps are music to my ears, but perhaps not to everybody else. So ultimately, what matters is usually not how much someone else paid for something, but how much the seller will let it go for and what our other options are. In this case, we've been pretty option constrained. So other factors which we took into account when we were putting together our search, we felt that publicizing the search, including the magnitude of the conditions at DPS and our urgency, would have driven up any cost that we encountered. And that is why we chose to use a broker and work through a broker rather than making the calls ourselves. When somebody sees the city of Ypsilanti on caller ID, kind of spoils the game a bit. Now, the industrial vacancy overall in the region is at a historic low. It's about 3%. The city does not contain very many modern industrial properties. Most of our industry grew up along the river. Mansfield really has the greatest concentration of modern industrial properties. So that is where we concentrated our search. So next slide, there we are. So our options when we considered our cost of alternative were to remain in the current DPS yard. There is a high unknown monetary cost due to the worker safety issues. If a roof were to fail and to harm somebody, that's a very bad situation on a number of levels. There's also an increased risk exposure due to the documented known issues with at least 2 of our buildings. We would lose our ability to provide a lot of our services by losing the mechanics bay in our workshop areas. Everything that is sort of currently out in the field would gradually fail more quickly and more quickly until we would be ultimately out of business. So we could contract out that work to at least some degree. However, the way our union contract is structured, we would be paying our people for the services that they would no longer be able to provide, as well as a contractor. So we would effectively be doubling our cost to provide the same services. And that's presuming that it cost any contractor about the same amount to provide the services as it would have cost us. So this was likely untenable in the long term, because not only would this have an increased cost, this would also lead to a delay in service. So not only would there be increased costs, there'd be a lot of worker and public frustration and a lot of turnover. Our next option was to remain in the current DPS yard while a new yard is constructed elsewhere. So all of the downside of option one apply, but the duration would be presumably limited. We looked at a round figure of about 3 million a year in transfer and delay costs. 2 million a year is about what the DPS payroll ultimately is for all 27 of us. And we bumped that up a little bit because we know that we're going to be getting charged not the direct cost for somebody else's services, but rather their cost plus overhead. The cost to construct a new, just in construction costs, would be between $7 and $15 million, depending upon the setting. Likely the only current city-owned property that would be buildable is Water Street, and infrastructure would need to be constructed and the site carefully selected, probably with a public process, which leads to both the time and the cost, or increases in both the time and the cost. So the third option would be to move the DPS yard as soon as possible. The downsides of option one do apply, but in a limited extent, because as soon as possible is as soon as possible. The cost to modify any structure would be significantly less than to construct new, and given a modern building would cost less to upgrade, update, or repair that modern building than it would to upgrade, update, and repair our 1800s building. This could be a temporary or a permanent move. The same modifications would need to be made regardless. So in our relocation options, we looked at one city-owned, potentially usable vacant or buildable site, and that's Water Street. The city owns quite a bit of other property. The Waterworks Park / compost yard was DQ'd because it is in a floodway. Railroad Street, we have a parcel at the very end of Railroad Street. About half of that is also in the floodway. We own a few other parcels that were either DQ'd because of their size, because of their location, or because of the difficulty to access them. And of course, our parks. Parks are generally off the list. So we looked at privately owned industrial facilities in or near the city listed for sale or for lease. We toured, studied, or at least considered several ones that were listed. We found 580 South Mansfield, and that made the final cut. We also looked at privately owned vacant land in or near the city listed for sale and suitable for industrial use. We did research and eliminate several properties outside the city limits, and there was not found to be any suitable privately owned vacant land within the city. So we also looked at privately owned industrial facilities or vacant land in or near the city that were not listed for sale or lease. We had kind of a wish list, but we didn't approach anybody. The city has a rather interesting track record with that. We were approached by the owners of 599 South Mansfield via their attorney after the first news story was made public that we were looking. So we also looked a little bit at partnerships. Eastern Michigan University is currently space constrained. If we were exploring a partnership, it would be a new build. They are willing to partner with us in the short term on materials and on services on a case-by-case basis. That's the same also with Washtenaw County Road Commission. They have no need for a new facility. They're willing to partner with us on a case-by-case basis for a reasonable cost. Ypsilanti Community Schools, we did not approach them. Most of their property is outside of the city. Ypsilanti Township, they don't have any analogous services. Also, if we were to locate outside of the city in Ypsilanti Township or Superior Township, we would be taking property off of their tax rolls, presumably. So part of our location constraints too is that we're expected to play a pretty significant role in emergency response, particularly for storms, winter storms, and to provide a timely response in other urgent situations. And having autonomy in our facility is pretty important in terms of emergency response, but also the location and being able to respond in a timely fashion. I'm going to go grab my coffee. Oh, a quick disclaimer about these numbers. They are not intended as a quote, nor are they represented as such. Quotes and bids were not solicited, as there's not yet a project for anybody to quote or bid. The numbers were developed by consulting some industry professionals, reviewing similar projects in their budgets, sometimes adjusting for the year of construction, and sometimes location and market. These numbers represent construction costs, ballpark construction costs, and they don't take into consideration design costs or oversight costs, which depending upon the project can be around 25%. So these numbers are for order of magnitude and for budgeting to be used for comparison of options. They are not intended to be gospel truth or promises. So relocation options for 14 West Forest, do nothing but repair everything. Remediation and due care, we don't know. We haven't finished our phase 1 assessment. For similarly sized sites, and similar expected levels of contamination without a full remediation. So this is taking into account, we're not going to scoop everything up, take it away and bring in new soil. We're looking at probably about $5 million. So to replace the roof, about 2 million, fire suppression and life safety, about 1 million, 250,000 for admin building expansion and life safety improvements, a new salt barn. That price varies hugely. I saw prices down from 250,000 to 1.5 or 2 million. So we picked a number in the middle, about 750,000. We're in an expensive market, but we're not going to go for something that has all the bells and whistles in the world. To improve our fuel pumps, it would be about 50,000, about 100,000 for hoist improvements, because the pit hoist we have can only lift up to 50,000 pounds. Our very cool new white recycling trucks are 67,000 pounds. And again, using those broad delay and transition costs, we figured for about a three-year delay or reduction in services, we'd probably be looking at 9 million. These are the squishiest numbers, I want to say. But sum total would probably be north of 15 million, possibly in the realms of 18 million. The other option we looked at was the Water Street option. That top right block, I'm sorry, it's blocked by the Zoom guy. But that outlines the Water Street engagement timeline with the contract that we just approved with Carlisle Wortman. So if we did want to locate anything on Water Street, we would want to integrate it with that Water Street engagement process. But the timeline would be pretty extensive. We'd be looking at probably at least 3 years. We'd have to develop a remediation plan and do due care, potentially bring utilities in the roadway to site, then of course actually design and actually construct it. So again, we're looking at north of 15 million. 580 Mansfield, which is actually no longer on the table. This was mainly appealing because of the building, because of its location across the street from another city-owned parcel, and the fact that the roof isn't in dire straits. So we would have to change the use of the building. We'd remove the existing partial build out. We might break even with the sale of material depending upon quotes. Everybody either varies from very optimistic to very pessimistic. We figure, great, we'll break even. We'd have to add fire suppression, add a couple of hoists, add a door, add some sort of exhaust ventilation system, add a fence and gate, pave more, add a salt barn, add storage buildings, add outdoor storage, figure out fuel. But then the other interesting thing with this particular parcel is it does back up onto Paint Creek. Paint Creek is a designated cold water trout stream. There are lots of environmental protections, but if you go to the next slide, you can also see where the floodway and the floodplain are currently mapped. Those intrude significantly onto the site. These maps, however, were developed in the 1970s, which was prior to the development of the industrial park, and we could pursue a letter of a map amendment in order to adjust those regulatory floodway boundaries. So that would be a wild card. However, the city does own a site across Mansfield. That's another 2 acres. It is currently it is walled off from Mansfield, and it is sort of within the area of Arbor Manor and Forest Knoll. We would have to approach that apartment complex and talk that out with them. The total cost for this would likely be in excess of about $10 million. Ultimately, that's acquisition, transition, construction. We'd still have the wild cards of that letter of map amendment and its impact upon construction costs and any sort of issues which might arise by attempting to use the Mansfield, the other city-owned parcel right across Mansfield. Not the least of which would be locating a 24/7 industrial facility right in the backyards of low-income housing. So when 599 Mansfield approached us, we ran the numbers. There would only be minor building updates needed immediately. So we'd convert some of the existing office space to locker and break rooms. We'd add adequate vehicle hoists. There's already fire suppression. It's already steel frame. It's got a concrete floor. It's got lighting where you can actually see what you're doing. In the short, medium term, we would need to add a small addition for admin and operations, just for full compliance. The bathrooms there, I believe, are single stall. We have 27 people. Salt barn would be needed as soon as possible. Storage building would be required, but not immediately. The total cost, including acquisition, was projected to be probably about $7.5 million. Next slide. And there's a map of the location. Now, final slide, we have that beautiful table with all of the options laid out. I apologize for some of the math errors in the previous table. I was correcting the numbers on certain slides and then bringing them over to this slide, and I missed a few. I did double check it this time, but please feel free to let me know if I didn't add anything correctly. But here we see on the high end, staying in 14 West Forest, the main wild card is that transition cost, and of course the remediation and due care concerns. And on the low end is 599 South Mansfield. Some people did raise the question of remediation cost. So fun story, Mansfield Industrial Park was actually developed by the city, and it was a city-owned parcel prior to its development. So this building was constructed in 1988, and I believe was continuously occupied by Linde Gas. And prior to that, it was vacant land. So that is why none anticipated is listed here. Transition cost is fairly low because we anticipate the transition to be fairly quick. Now, obviously, we don't know what we don't know, but this is how staff arrived at our recommendation. Any questions?
Questions? Or we'll pause.
So one question that I have is, it says a salt barn is needed for the 599 property. Is that possible? Being that it won't be there, and if we do accept this offer, what does that mean for services this winter?
We've been in talks with EMU and earlier on this year with Washtenaw County Road Commission, and believe we have a plan of attack. We would be relying on our partners in inclement weather. They would not be providing the services, but we would probably be taking a little bit longer because we'd have to go to an alternate location to get our salt during inclement weather.
Other questions from council before we move to our public? Oh, after? Okay. Well, thank you. Fine. We're gonna move on to public comments. Then. No, you could do that during the resolution. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna start with who signed up on the list. You'll have 3 minutes, of course, to address council. Mark Hergott, good evening.
Mark Hergod, 111 Miles. Okay, so Brian, this isn't about you. You're worth $87,000. I'm not trying to be mean. Harold, it is about you guys. I'm really sorry about what's going on with you. It's untenable and something needs to be resolved as soon as possible. As possible might be longer than what you want. Okay, so City Council hires former council member for rushed land deal and kicks him back a nice chunk of change. It is the plot of a bad airport novel about small town city corruption. It's not about you, Brian, okay? If you do this, this will mark the end of your political careers here in the city. I know that you're doing right. Veronica knows that you're doing right. Everybody that's listening knows that you're doing right. There's not everybody that's going to be voting that's in this room, and they're just going to hear what I said about the bad airport novel. This is simply untenable to explain to the body politic. You're going to have to figure something else out because it's not going to work if you, and maybe you don't want to work here anymore. maybe you don't want to work here anymore. This is a good way to make a retirement plan. It is as simple as that. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Veronica Hargenrader?
Yeah, that's right. My name is Veronica Hargenreiter. I live at 2592 Eagles Circle, Unit 1. The only neighborhood on that side of Hewitt. It's been gerrymandered into the city. So I just want to say thank you for putting this together. It did seem like a rush decision. It seemed like a really big surprise, and I feel a lot better after hearing all of the numbers and seeing that presentation. After Water Street, after everything that we've been through as a city, it did not look good, you guys. I still think there's a better way. I still think I agree something has to be done very, very soon. But this doesn't look good. Thanks.
Thank you. Dick Maddie? Good evening.
Thank you. I moved here 29 years ago, was a lead corporate negotiator for the Kimberly-Clark Corporation on worldwide accounts. And never been to one of these meetings, suffered through the Water Street debacle, and the China Gate, and now the recent firing or leaving of the city manager that stole time from the city, as well as potentially ingratiating herself in her bank accounts. And I think the city residents need some compassion and some well thought out decisions made by the council. Now, being a negotiator, and I have nothing to do with ever wanting to have an interest in representing anybody and doing anything as it relates to this, but you're buying a building for $3.7 million that someone bought on a land contract for $1.1 million a year ago. Now, land contracts tend to be for properties that a seller can't sell outright on the market or wants to carry the mortgage, but land contracts tend to be about 10% down. So these people probably have about $100,000 invested in this property. And if they were to sell it for 3.7 million and pay off the 1.1 million note, they'd be making a 2,600% profit on the city of Ypsilanti. I don't know what negotiations have gone into trying to get that price down to a reasonable number, but that's unconscionable. And I saw somewhere where it was a 5-day due diligence built into the contract. 800 square foot homes in Ypsilanti have a 10-day due diligence. You need a 30 would be even a joke. You'd need a 90-day due diligence to do this deal. Now, interestingly enough, I went back into the assessor's office and I looked, and this property at 599, other than violations for permit violations and owing $20,000 in back taxes, they have violations for operating without a business permit, operating without a valid certificate of occupancy. Neither of them have been resolved. And ironically enough, they approached you in August with their building. They've only pulled 2 permits that they've acted on. One is for 1,000-gallon diesel fuel tank. I'm assuming the city trucks run on diesel for the most part and plows. And they've also asked for and also got permits for 3 hoists. Now, how ironic is that they asked for 1,000-gallon tank for diesel and 3 hoists, and then come to the city with 3.7 million a couple of weeks later. I mean, this smells to high heaven. This stinks. I think we all agree that if you drive by the Forest facility, that needs to be replaced. And I also find it quite ironic that the department responsible for capital improvements has let that facility run down. It's their own facility and they're responsible for capital improvements, but they do deserve better than what they have. But this deal stinks. It rots, and you need a good commercial realtor. Hire somebody from Ann Arbor to come in and handle this for you.
Thank you.
This is ridiculous.
Thank you. Jennifer Goulet? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I want to thank you. I'm terribly grateful for the opportunity for us to be together in this room to have the additional information. Bonnie, thank you for that. That was a very helpful presentation to help us put this issue into context and to give us an opportunity to come before you again. I want to start by supporting the critical need for our Department of Public Services, for our staff, and for our public services that they provide in such amazing fashion in spite of all of these challenges that they're in the midst of. But while that's a priority, I would like to see there be a priority on ensuring a thorough and transparent due diligence process. Tonight was moving in that direction, evaluating both short and long-term solutions. And I'd urge City Council to take the competitive lead on it, looking at options, as opposed to feeling like you're in kind of a situation of urgency and desperation that then positions others to take advantage of us. I'm urging you to vote no on the proposed purchase and the budget resolutions, and instead proceed with a two-part process that would first put priority on addressing interim strategies, which tonight we're learning that some of that is already being put into place to support our staff and our services through partnerships, through alternate temporary locations, on alternative sites, either within the city or outside of the city boundaries. And then to proceed with a comprehensive feasibility study with appropriate due diligence in identifying and evaluating alternative sites and providing opportunities for public engagement and transparency. And I think the work that's been presented and shared with all of us tonight is a tremendous foundation. Clearly there are some still questions related to cost estimates and such. That process could help bring that forward. And supporting what Dick said, consider inviting an experienced commercial real estate and development team to submit proposals to serve as your professional advisors. This is of a project of this magnitude is something that really requires that kind of guidance. OHM, I'm excited to hear that they've been part of this. I don't know Wagner, but it appears that that has been part of this, an opportunity to take that to the next level in terms of cost estimates. Ensuring that appropriate environmental assessments and site inspections are conducted and provided sufficient time. 5 days is not prudent in the current agreement. Ensuring that detailed financial estimates are provided for all of the potential sites and including remediation needed for the current site, anticipating that should the city put that site up for sale, there may be some potential cleanup responsibilities that the city would bear. And then finally, analysis on the impact of options on our city budget, our general fund, and our fund reserves for operational purposes. So again, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Ed Carisno. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I'm Ed Carisno. I live at 1110 Pearl Street. The last time I spoke, I did not do that. I apologize for that oversight. Thank you. I want to thank you for reconsidering this action that you took on Tuesday evening. And I also want to thank Bonnie for the comprehensive presentation she made this evening. Certainly the issues, both structural and safety at the DPS facility, are of a tantamount concern and should be addressed as soon as possible. However, the action you took on Tuesday evening approving the sale or the purchase of 599 Mansfield is not the route to go. Based upon the financial information that was presented that evening, if you pursue this, you will spend not only the $5 million fund balance that you have, but you will spend an additional $4 million that you don't have. And if you did that, you would be most likely dipping into the general fund, impacting other services provided by the city to take care of this issue. So rather than do that, I would recommend, like Ms. Goulet has, that you approach this in a comprehensive fashion with a comprehensive financial plan that addresses all the issues regarding environmental and purchase of new property and so on and so forth. It's got to be a plan that's well thought out and certainly takes care of issues in the short term, but also addresses the long-term needs of the DPS and the city's finances. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Frank Wright. Good evening.
My name's Frank Wright. I live on West Cross Street. I want to thank Bonnie. It was a eye-opening presentation, very informative. And I don't like coming to these meetings, and probably maybe not as much as you dislike it sometimes, because a lot doesn't get done, and you hear a lot of people complain, and I'm just going to be another kind of a complainer, I guess. But when I first heard about this, a friend of mine told me about it yesterday, and it sounded bad. You know, and when I looked into it, the information that I got was echoed. I think Dick already mentioned quite a few things that I'm completely in agreement with. You know, about, it sounds like we've got somebody coming in, making a small investment relatively, and wants to walk away with, you know, two point some million dollars of our money, our tax money. And so just the optics of it doesn't look good, doesn't sound good. In fact, like Dick said, it doesn't smell good at all. So I know that there's good commercial real estate people around the area. Grubb and Ellis has a Michigan location. Bob Anders is one of the most respected commercial brokers, not only in this area, but also in the state and the Midwest. You can look into other people. I don't know the real estate person you're using. I don't know if they operated with letters of intent in the way you're supposed to do things before you go right into signing a lease. But this bum's rush, this doesn't work for me. And I can't understand why anybody would fall for it, especially when you look at the fact, didn't we already learn our lesson with Water Street? The seller wants us to assume any kind of liabilities, release them from any other reliability on the property, whether it be contaminated or not. It just does not work. So I respectfully ask you to vote no on this. And at the very least, table it. But I think that this needs a study. And I did want to add that you have professionals that live here in our community that I'm certain would be willing to help. Dick Maddie is one of the most respected realtors in the area. He's in residential, not commercial, but he has a wealth of knowledge you could tap. There's people that have worked with leases and letters of intent and that type of thing on development that can give you some idea what to do. And I think that you need professional help from a good real estate broker. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Jason Cloutier? Is that how you say it? No? How, what is it?
No, but I'm used to that.
Is it
It's called
Coulter?
Cloutier.
Cloutier, okay,
Oh.
Cloutier, thank you, good
Oh,
evening.
no worries.
Sorry.
913 Washington. Hello, my name's Jason Cloutier. I just learned about this whole fiasco a couple days ago. So yeah, like it's the optics, like, oh my goodness, you're spending millions of dollars and you're going to do it with a previous guy that's one of you all, and he's gonna get kickbacks of it. Like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? Like, maybe you should have a resolution, a lottery or something, have people put in and actually have people apply to be the city's realtor, just like you have a attorney. And then maybe have a resolution. So maybe they're not going to jack up the price and everything, so they don't get that extra incentive of commission, because 3.7 versus 1.1, I know inflation's hit, but it only hit 10% in the past year. Like, that's not, what was it, 2000 something, whatever. That's the one. But yeah, it's as just a citizen, like, catching wind of this. This is crazy. This is crazy. Like, I do better. Like, I understand the urgency. Like, shit's falling apart and you got to do something about it. I get that. But like, you got to do it the right way and just do it so you can do the best that you can instead of just doing what's quicker or easier, like the path of least resistance. Like, it's, I don't know, you do things right instead of just doing enough that might get by. Like, yes, people are going to get pissed. Like, this will be a major thing on campaigning. Like, this is like one of those things, like, fix the damn roads. Like, people are going to be like, what did you do about Mansfield? So like, no, like, obviously solve the problem there. We just had a presentation about why the problem is there, but find a different medium to solve the problem instead of one of your own. So there isn't the apparent conflict of interest. I don't know you. It's not personal. It's just, that's what you do. You don't hire your nephew. It's basically nepotism. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are the names I had written down. So is there anyone in the audience who, please come. Good evening. Hello.
My name's Doug Geidner. I got a history in, in Ypsilanti. I have worked in the town. I was a UPS driver for 20 years here. So I know everybody that had businesses on Michigan Ave when Water Street fell apart. And every one of those owners of those buildings said, this is ridiculous. I don't see this going anywhere. And look where we are, 20 some years later, and we got an empty field there. I'd like to see your plan about Water Street. That'd be great. Why don't we do something there so it makes it look better, and then we could have a plan. You don't have a plan. I'm a builder and a broker, real estate broker, and you don't have a plan for buying this building. I mean, you might have something what you're going to do, but you got to do a lot of work to this building and a lot of money. Well, why not do it down here where you can invest and have that area start coming back up, and then maybe attract some investors that want to build something down there so we can have a better looking city. And that's my opinion. I think it's a bad situation, what you're doing. I just bought a house here in Ypsilanti on River Street and I'm rehabbing it. And I took more time than you have to invest in that property than what you're doing with Mansfield. So I think you're on the wrong track and I hope you change your mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Rex Ritchie. I have a property in Depot Town. I just want to express I don't know. I'm so tired of this city council making bad decisions. We tried to get parking in Depot Town. That was shot down. The DDA offered to pay for it, or the DDA. And for some reason that didn't work. We wanted to do a lot of projects, but because of union problems and stuff, we were told we couldn't do those. So we've been put off on a lot of that, tree trimming, redoing the entire marketplace. We were going to use our DDA money to do that. Can't do that. And now the city wants to go and make a stupid decision and spend all this money. I think I'm echoing everybody in the room tonight. And if you can't see that, I'm really going to be it's evident. Everybody thinks this is stupid. Don't do it. Take some time to think about it and make another decision. Parking, like they put parking kiosks in Depot Town. None of the people in Depot Town, none of the business owners wanted paid for parking. We wanted to let our patrons park for free. That promotes business. Come down, shop. You don't have to pay for parking. What do? They put kiosks in. They spent money. I don't think they're ever going to pay for those kiosks on the money they get from them. It's probably another stupid business decision. And you guys need to start thinking like business. The city is a business. You got to make money to spend money. If you can't make it, you can't spend it. And you guys aren't making it, so don't spend it. Once you start realizing that and focusing on your businesses, we've lost how many businesses downtown because of the stupid decisions going on with the construction. And the construction is ugly. You know, they came through and redid it and there's concrete spilled all over the asphalt. It looks like hell. I'm ashamed. Really, it's terrible. You guys need to be accountable and you need to take the construction people into account and make things right and make this place look right. You got 2 different colored yellow stripes in the streets. It looks amateur. There's just a ton of bad decisions and bad business going on. And I think we need to start thinking like a business and we'll be a far better place. I appreciate your work. I know it's a pain in the ass to come to these meetings and serve your city, but I'm just trying to, I've been doing this for 40 years down in Depot Town and seen a lot come and go. But I would just say that, you know, let's start thinking about Ypsi as a business and start thinking about making it more profitable for our, because if we don't have a tax base, we're nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Please come. Good evening.
Evening.
And then I even have it for the audience too, so let me just take a moment.
Yes, for the audience.
So, thanks so much. My name is Steve Pierce and I live at 118 South Washington. And I'm very grateful that you brought this decision back to think about and reconsider the vote to spend this money. There's lots of things to talk about. I talked about some of those before, but I wanted to instead focus on one of the charts that was in the packet that you received, and that's the comparison of options. And in just a matter of just a couple of days, we've had an amazing array of numbers come down the pike. And in the November 7th presentation that was up on the board or up on the monitor after public comment, it listed the costs of West Forest at 9 to 13 million, 599 at 7.5 and 508 at 8.6. And then in the packet that came out in yesterday for Forest, it listed the cost. It went from 9 to 13 to 13.6. Mansfield went to 7.55. Water Street was added, which was sort of weird because that hadn't been discussed before. But what's missing in this is a fair comparison. And that's really the third slide that I want you to look at. Because if you look at the packet, the numbers that we've got in the packet, what's not covered in the 599 costs is the $5 million for the remediation. And that remediation is going to happen whether you are staying at Forest or going to 599. And so that has to be included in the costs of looking at how this money is going to be spent. And when you do that, and that's what this chart here outlines here, that's third page, it's really a wash. It's 13.65 is the current numbers from Bonnie and the city. And these are the city's numbers. I haven't done anything. These are actually out of the packet. There's the city is saying 12.5 to 14.5 when you do an apples to apples comparison. But what's not included, and this is why 599 really needs to be thought very carefully before you vote to spend this money, is you're taking 599 off the tax rolls. And so that is money that needs to be factored into the cost, and that's not been done. And there was a mention about not wanting to take tax property off the tax rolls in the township and somehow offending the township. But we're taking the money off the town in the city, and I think we should be thinking about that. There's also no discussion about the costs of phase 1 and phase 2 environmental. That should be considered in there. And then the assumption is that the 599 has no remediation.
And that's why if you look on the fourth page, the picture of the building, that was an industrial gas supplier from one of the largest chemical companies in the country, in the world, was located there for nearly 20 years. That unknown is really dangerous. Thank you for your time. Please vote no.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Please come. Good evening.
Evening. Thank you for having this meeting tonight, and thank you for reconsidering this. There's a lot to discuss, and and I am Chuck Boltman from 220 South Huron. There's a lot to discuss as a collection of buildings. As an architect, it's hard for me to keep my tongue bitten with a number of issues, but I just want to focus on one. And the one is, when you give professional advice, one of the things you think about is, where can this advice bite me? Where can it go wrong? So perfectly normal, DPS hired engineers to come and look at their buildings. And I would like to talk about the structural issue. So I can't talk about the main building because I've never been inside, but I can talk about the salt shed because I just toured it today. And the salt shed, can we put that image up on the screen? Is that possible? So I took a walk around the salt shed, and the recommendation is to take the building down. And the recommendation is it will cost $750,000 to repair it. What is deficient in that building is simply the bottom of the wood posts. Those engineers are not trained, as I am, in heavy timber construction. I've been doing it for 25 years. I've worked on buildings older than the Revolutionary War. We've salvaged buildings that are very, quote, scary looking. That building, the salt shed, doesn't scare me a bit. It needs a simple sill repair. We do it every day on timber frames. You cut the bottom of the post, you take out sections, you put in a new sill. It is good for another 50 years. I had it priced today. You can do it for $50,000. That building does not. That building has 50 years in it. A little bit of concrete repair, a little bit of crack repair. Now, don't take this as a criticism of either Bonnie, DPS, or those engineers. They don't study this stuff. I've been studying old buildings for 25 years. I would love to get a look at those trusses. In the pictures, they look really good. Maybe there's one that needs to be repaired. We build barn vents from scratch today. There's literally a conference going on right now in Colorado discussing all of these things that I am missing, not just to be here, but on how you build buildings with heavy timber construction. That knowledge is not known to a 21st century engineer. That knowledge, for the most part, very small percentage. No one within 100 miles from here has the knowledge that I have of these buildings. Why? Because I know all of them. We all talk. So these buildings can be repaired, and it's very likely that you've gotten advice from some well-intended engineer who doesn't know this technology they're staring at. And when I can find it in one building, I have to ask myself, what happened with the others? Because I can't see them. So that's my message. If I can find one that easily, I'd like to take a look and find others. I'm more than happy to volunteer my time.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council? No, no, it doesn't. We know, we can find you. Thank you. Mr. Tucson, I saw your hand come out of your pocket. Come, please approach. Nope. Good evening. So I can hear you.
The only thing that I want to say, council, hoping that you can reconsider taking your time, making decisions, don't get hasty, and thank you for your vote. Being quiet. Don't be hasty and doing things, because all you gotta do, Ed Charisma, the ex-city manager, he laid it out so sweet the other night. And I was hoping somebody would catch on to what he was saying. He laid it out real sweet. And I just hope you guys do not take us to Mansfield because we just got off of Water Street. Y'all got me? Okay, we just got off of Water Street. Don't take us back to Mansfield because the old taxpayers has got to foot the bill, right? All right.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address the council before we move to our Zoom participants? Is there anyone on Zoom, Aaron?
Yes, first we have Zeke Isle.
Good evening.
Zeke, you should have permission to talk, but it looks like you're muted.
Zeke?
We'll come back to Zeke. Moses Levy or Levi.
Moses Levi? Good evening.
Good evening. Am I coming through all right?
Yes.
Perfect. My name is Moses Levy. Good attempt there, guys. It happens all the time. I just have an issue with some of the property managers and property owners in the area. And right now, I think that with BlackRock buying up all the property that they can, now's not a really good time for the city to consider buying anything. I think we should wait a couple of years until property prices stabilize because they're inflated to an extreme amount, over 300% in the last 5 years in some areas, just here in Michigan alone. And it's mainly because BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager with $9.42 trillion in assets that operate in 100 countries, are taking advantage of the property that they're able to buy up and they convert it to their own uses. And because they have so many assets, it's very, very hard for smaller cities and even smaller businesses to go and buy properties at a reasonable rate. I mean, the founders of BlackRock, Larry Fink is worth 1.27 billion, Robert Escapito, 470 million, Susan Wagner, 422 million, Barbara Novak, 224 million, Ben Golub, 160 million, and Ralph Schlosstein, 375 million. Now, the funny thing about that is all 6 of those happen to be Jewish, and they keep buying up all this property. And I don't know why they're doing this other than to stop everyone else in this country from being able to buy and afford property. They're trying to turn everything into a renter's market so that way they can use their usurious methods and nefarious ideology to go and stop regular people from having a place to live, from owning property and owning their own home, or business owners from owning their business. They want everything to be a lease. They want everything rented so that way they keep lining their pockets. It's unfair. And I
Thank
don't
you.
think
No. That wasn't.
Thank you.
Ken Tokars.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Ms. Wessler made a very valid argument that the Department of Public Service has needs. I guess my question is why this conversation did not take place months ago or as early as 2022, and why the city did not start having meetings at that point in time. Public trust is fragile, and the process that's taking place compromises that trust, and that must be considered here. I encourage you to engage the public, possibly go for a bond, ask the voters. Then if the voters say no, then come back to city council and let them approve it. We heard several options today. One option that was not discussed was keeping portions of the existing building. I work with heavy timber construction, so I know exactly what the earlier gentleman was saying. You know, that facility could still house salt and other items, and you could get a smaller building for some of your other needs. There's other ideas out there. I think just more time needs to be taken to explore those options. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others on Zoom? Thank you.
RM.
Good evening.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Amber Fellows. Just want to acknowledge the anti-Semitic public comment earlier. You do have it backwards, where you should be critical of the monopolizing, not someone's ethnicity or religion. Okay, so rushing a high cost development decision and mostly in the dark is gonna look bad no matter what. And then you add Brian Jones Chance to the mix, and people are just not going to take you or any of your justifications seriously at that point. So I hope you know it's just gonna look bad no matter what. And I didn't know about this development until I was sitting in the room that night. And a lot of people still don't. Just because the DPS facilities are in shambles does not mean that the residents of this town have to swallow the consequences of your oopsies, especially the urgency of this deal made in the dark. Clearly, DPS facilities should have been discussed in public starting years ago. There should have been a process laid out specifically for this need, so we could have all this talent and experience that's coming up to the mic to give advice, to give assessment, to give resources. So it didn't have to be something you're relying on a very constrained expertise and amount of time to. I want to ask, why was this in a closed meeting? Can John Barr explain that? Because now it's a public meeting, so shouldn't it have always been a public meeting? The fact that you started a fully attended meeting 2 hours late with no acknowledgement of the inconvenience or apology does not reflect well. It does discourage participation. Several people left. Some people that were even supposed to present left. It just does not take people seriously. Our time is not respected, and that discourages participation. Yeah, taking on an emergency meeting 2 days later still doesn't give proper notice to residents. We just got this presentation from Bonnie, and it's going to take, it was a lot of info and not a lot of time, and residents need to see the presentation and digest it to give meaningful feedback that isn't based on gut feeling alone. We deserve that, and you do too. And I'm glad that the residents of Ypsi don't have a short-term memory. I remember the false urgency around International Village and Water Street, and the similar rhetoric around like fear and, you know, this idea of austerity and like negotiating from a place of weakness where we have no ability to do anything. Our hands are thrown up because the market is what it is, and we just have to do what whoever is telling us to buy the thing tells us to do it. So I don't know. I would like us to just push this way back, like develop a process for talking about this. The urgency, the state of the facilities, it's on you, it's on staff, it is not on the residents or our taxes. So talk about the city-owned parcels some more. There's land on North Huron Street and Jarvis that got clear cut that's just sitting there. What's up with that? You know, we just have more time to think about this. Do not vote yes on this.
Thank you.
I apologize, RM. I somehow activated two people at once. So if you're there, it's your turn.
All right. Good evening. Thank you. My name is Richard Murphy. I live on North Adams Street in the 3rd Ward, and about 2 blocks from the current DPS yard. I've heard 2 complaints about this process. One is that it's moving too fast, and the other is that there is no money to take care of the problems. I will say none of these are new problems. To the previous speaker's comments, these are problems that have been brought up by Public Works staff over the years. I once worked for the city about 15 years ago. Many of the safety and operational problems with the current yard were known at that time by the staff who worked there. They were brought up and they were told, there's no money, sit tight, patch it, work with what you can. That's been the mantra for years and years under various city managers and various councils. And I'm proud of this new council. Many of you were just seated a year ago, and the current new city manager and new public works director for not continuing to operate on duct tape and wishful thinking to hold the public works yard together and just hope that a building doesn't collapse and kill the crew. I was proud of council on Tuesday night for taking the difficult decision to move forward with this and not continue to let it get worse, not continue to let prices go up, and to pick what, even though it looks expensive, appears to be the most prudent option available, both for the cost and the ability to get operations moving quickly again. So I thank you for your vote on Tuesday night. I hope that whatever you decide, you move quickly and do not continue to delay the urgent needs that the Public Works crews have been voicing for years and years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Peter Church.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. I'd like to discuss basically two aspects of it. The first aspect is the possibility of rethinking the whole DPS structure and what we can do in terms of reducing their costs and facility requirements. I know that we have not had the best relationships with the township or the university in recent times, and I'm wondering if that could be fixed or possibly initiated, and to see if we could possibly share some resources that would take up some of the requirements that DPS has. Certainly the storage of salt is not something that's something that we have to do all on our own. If somebody else is also doing it that is nearby and we could use that facility, that might really be something that would work out for both parties. Things like that. And also some of the lawn mowing tasks that we have, not very technical, and maybe we could consider contractors to do some of that, further reducing our footprint for the DPS. The other point that I wanted to make was the process. This is going to have such a debilitating effect on democracy in this small city. And it's not the first time it's happened. We've seen this kind of thing, this sort of a smash and grab where somebody tries to rush something through, rush a vote on it. And then the really bad thing that happened on this particular case was, of course, having that meeting yesterday. That was, out of the public eye and in violation of state law. And I think we really need to rethink a lot of aspects of democracy in the city of Ypsilanti. One is the ridiculous limit on how long people can speak at these things. Two, how quickly things can be voted. And three, taking an opportunity to put things on the ballot when it's possible. I think that's really all I had to say. And thanks.
Thank you.
We'll try Zeke again.
Yeah, thank you. My internet dropped out. I just want to say, I think we're beating around the bush here, and the raccoon problem is a good analogy for what's going on in our community and elsewhere. That there's like over 30 Jewish NGOs flooding our country.
same
with
person.
sugar, and,
Yeah, it's the
you
same.
You see the niggers going.
That is listed as two different people. I have two comments that were submitted to be read into the record. If anybody else on Zoom would like to speak, press the raise hand button while I'm reading these, please. So first is from Cheryl Farmer at 214 North Huron. Dear Mayor and Council, I was appalled to realize our Ypsilanti City Council violated the State Open Meetings Act on Tuesday night. I appreciate tonight's do-over since, as the Washington Post says, democracy dies in darkness. But a do-over won't undo the harm already done to your credibility and to our trust. It won't provide your voters with the same set of facts and opinions as were shared in 2 hours of closed session last Tuesday. I think this purchase is a bad idea and hold out hope for a different vote tonight. Here are my concerns. Number one, why did you violate the Open Meetings Act by holding a closed session on the issue of a new Department of Public Services building? Are you getting bad advice, ignoring good advice, hiding something? Number two, what was the process for choosing your former council colleague and friend Brian Jones-Chance as the sales associate representing the city? The average real estate commission in Michigan is 5.65%, which on a sale of 3.7 million would be more than $209,000. This looks like potential fodder for a 6 o'clock news expose. Under our charter, council members are supposed to be deciding all matters on merits, free from conflicts of interest and apparent improper influences. Is that what you are doing? Number 3, do we need a new DPS building? This need was not mentioned in the spring budget discussions. This year and last year's budget have had to be balanced with dwindling funds from the city savings account, deficit spending, we're broke. Number 4, if we do need a new building, should we purchase the building in our industrial park at 599 South Mansfield for $3.7 million, which is $264 per square foot? This building is currently assessed for $231,600, considerably less than a building valued at this asking price would be assessed. A comparable at 663 Mansfield sold for $1 million or $58 per square foot last year. If we try to negotiate the price on 599 Mansfield down, even if 599 Mansfield were reasonably priced, we're broke. Also, we shouldn't want to remove yet one more property from the tax rolls. Number 5, if we do need a new building, should we keep the current site? A local resident who is in construction suggested Tuesday night we could knock down and replace the current building on the same site for half what we would spend on 599 Mansfield. Has this option been researched? The current site is also very centrally located, a big plus in terms of efficiency for the work that DPS does. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Your audience was 100% opposed to this purchase on Tuesday night, including our longest-serving city manager, Ed Carisno, and our highly qualified former city planner, Jennifer Goulet. Please reconsider your vote and vote no on this proposal tonight. Restore your credibility as an elected representative who listens to their constituents. Thank you. The second statement is from Sarah Harvey at 719 Charles. My concerns involve the decision made by City Council on November 7th, 2023 to approve the purchase of a property at 599 Mansfield to house our DPS. Many citizens have also voiced their concerns about this particular decision as well as how it was achieved. No citizens have stood up to support this decision. Are our elected representatives actually representing the citizens who elected them? I am in complete agreement with the former mayor, Cheryl Farmer, when she stated, and then she goes on to quote points 1 through 5 that I just read. Additionally, I think it prudent to ask whether there are any other options available that do not involve the purchase of more property, but instead make use of alternative properties already owned by the city.
Thank you.
I see we have a new hand on Zoom for Sarah Rowland.
Is that who you just read the comment from?
Sarah Harvey.
Sarah Harvey, okay. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm speaking tonight to ask you to vote no on this matter. It feels like the purchase is irresponsible and rushed. There are concerns that haven't been addressed, such as having a 5-day inspection period, as was discussed by architects, experts in the room, and real estate agents as well. And the cost of taking this off the tax rolls has not been considered. We need to reevaluate the cost of repairs, as we've heard tonight, from a very valid architect who can tell you that, obviously he spoke very eloquently, telling us that we haven't really looked at all the possibilities for our current site. We also need to look further into merging services. People have mentioned, and it's in the packet as well, about sharing salt. I don't see why that couldn't be done. There's probably other ways that we can start to build relationships with some of these outside entities. You really need to start listening to your people. I've only heard one person tonight say, yes, you are representatives. You need to represent us. Speaking out on your own, making choices on your own is not doing what you were elected to do. You also need to respect your constituents. I know there's something really going on when I find myself repeating what Amber Fellows has to say. We're not often on the same side of the table. So respect your people, respect your constituents. Don't make people wait for 2 hours in a closed meeting. It's just disrespectful. Stop shady transactions. First, we have Francis McMullen. Now we roll into this Brian Chance Jones stuff. What the heck, you guys? You're making us the laughing stock once again, and then we're rushing into real estate purchases, which in our very current past, we have made terrible decisions about. It's just embarrassing, and it really breaks down public trust. And we'd like to have representatives that we can believe in. And I just don't feel like that's happening anymore. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Darnell Simmons.
Hello, you hear me?
Good evening.
Yeah, I want to talk about, the lady, she making good points. Honestly, she making real good points. She was talking about how all them niggas there, they fucking around and they fucking up.
Okay. Absolutely not. No. Are there other names?
I think there's one more, but I think it's the same.
Same person again? Okay. Is there anyone else in this audience that has not had an opportunity? Please.
Hello, Mayor,
good
Council. I was on Zoom. I walked over, so
Thank you.
glad the comments continued. I just wanted to talk to you guys about what the city of Chicago went through. And of course, my name's Joshua McCready. I live at 411 North Huron Street, just south of DPS Yard. So the city of Chicago went through a rush purchase or a rushed agreement by an outside company, like a banking company, to sell their parking. And they were stuck with that decision for years. And the city of Chicago now is beholden to the contract that they signed. That was a similar situation where it came through city council. People just like you were making this decision and they felt pressure. I urge you to say no, because we can't afford to lock in decisions that maybe after the fact we'd like to change. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in this audience that would like to make public comment before we close public comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment. Before I move on, I just want to acknowledge that before we have public comment, I always make a statement, and maybe I was remiss in making the statement tonight, that not only do you approach the podium or you address council, but you also do that with respect for all people. I actually almost missed the anti-Semitic comments that came up in the first one because I was spitting gum out, to be honest. I'm sorry. But when I realized what I was hearing, of course, we ended the comments, and then to follow it with more, and then racial slurs, that is inappropriate, and we will not allow that here. And so if folks think that that's what they're going to do, they will be cut off every time and not allowed to continue speaking. It's inappropriate, and I apologize to everyone in the room and everyone else who's on Zoom. None of us deserve to hear that or endure that. And I just wanted to lift it and acknowledge it because it's just completely inappropriate and not acceptable. And so again, I hope that take a quick pause before we move into our resolutions. Because I'm a little upset, sorry. I don't want to take a break. I want to keep going, and we're going to keep going, but no. All right. Mayor Pro Tem, you have our first resolution. I'm sorry, Councilman Sweet, you have our first resolution.
Resolution number 20.
Sorry, we need a motion to reconsider this first.
Ah, thank you. Can someone make the motion?
So I move to reconsider, what's the amount? I don't have.
Oh.
I move to for reconsideration of resolution number 2023-216. And I said.
Support.
Moved and supported. Do we need discussion on that, or do we just vote?
Please vote.
All in favor to reconsider?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Councilman Sweet. And then we'll do the other one.
You can't reconsider because you
She wasn't here.
Because I wasn't here.
All right, we're gonna.
I would like to move to reconsider resolution 2023-216. Do I need to make that for 217 at the same time or
Yeah,
separate?
can we just do both? Oh, no, wait, what? What?
You do both at the same time, Mr. Barr?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
I move to reconsider them, but consider them separately.
thank you.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilman Sweet. Okay, yes.
Resolution number 2023-216. It is resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti that whereas the Ypsilanti Department of Public Services needs a new building to continue operations, and whereas City Council authorized a property search by buyer's agent, and whereas suitable property has been found at 599 South Mansfield, and whereas City Council, after staff presentation and recommendation, finds it in the best interest of the City of Ypsilanti to purchase 599 South Mansfield in the sum of $3,700,000 cash. Now therefore, the purchase of 599 South Mansfield is approved and authorized, and the mayor and city clerk are authorized to sign the proposed purchase agreement, copy attached hereto, and the city manager and staff are authorized to implement the purchase agreement and do all things necessary to close the purchase, all subject to the approval of the city attorney. Further, the city manager and staff are authorized to sell any and all of the unneeded personal property that goes with the sale by public or private sale as allowed by law, and to retain auctioneers and sales agents as necessary, and I so move.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. All right. So we've had the presentation, we've had public comment. It's time for discussion. Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Jay Simmons.
I'd like to thank Director Wessler for the presentation and the updates to those numbers. Time is of the essence, and our Department of Public Service workers' safety is paramount. Having said that, there are other options. I also want to apologize to constituents for the haste in which this was brought forward. That urgency is not the same as haste, and that got conflated at our last meeting. So I apologize personally for that haste. Having said that, I'd like to thank some of my constituents, the Goulets, Ed Carisno, and Chuck, who lives in Ward 1, for conversations, and Steve Pierce as well, for lengthy conversations over the last several days about this process and ways to proceed with this. This was a decision made out of fear and haste based on fear for our safety of our employees. But there, and I respect and appreciate Director Wessler's advocacy for that, and the extensive amount of work that she's put into the presentation that was here. The question came up in one of the comments is, why wasn't this done? Why wasn't this presentation done months ago? And I don't have an answer for that, but that doesn't mean that we can't reconsider this now. So there are lots of things that go into these decisions. And I acted in haste the last time we was here. But after these conversations with several experts, I'm going to vote no on this. This is I had questions at the last time we went through this with the price of this. It appalls me that a building for 1.1 million a year ago is going at 3.7 now, and just the nature of the way that offer came up. There are options that have been explored by Bonnie, but I think would need to be more fully explored by council, by the mayor, by council. Those relationships with other institutions in our city need to be cultivated, and other solutions need to be found in partnership with them. One of the things that I've talked with Ed Carisno about is a process for doing this, and the RFP for sites and the RFP for professional consideration for not only financial, not only the real estate, but economic development, and seating a panel to advise the city on these issues. So I will be working to do that. Should this fail, I will be working to do that and bring those things into play. And that's it. $3.7 million is, as Dick Matty pointed out, $2.6 million, far too much for this property. There's a lot of due diligence that has been started, and as Jennifer Goulet pointed out, Bonnie has done an amazing job on the foundation, but there's a lot of work to be done to do due diligence, and this isn't going to be a quick process, but we need to move forward with securing safe places for our staff to work and to be able to get that job done. And that's the high priority. So again, I apologize to constituents for what has transpired in the last week. And I hope we can move forward and regain your trust. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Jay Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I agree with the things you said, so I'm not going to repeat those things as well. Thank you, Director Wessler, for your presentation. I'm glad that we were able to have that. That was incredibly helpful. So I think the one thing I just want to say then, to add on from the things Steve had to say, is that, and I said this previously when we were in the previous budget season, I just want to encourage my colleagues up here that that we focus on kind of the core things, right? when it comes to budget season. So we have, a responsibility to provide, certain services that no one else can provide, maintaining, our streets and different facilities and things we provide to the public. And so that we need to focus on doing those things and doing them well, because any of the extra stuff won't matter. And I think for too long, we have not paid sufficient enough attention to our kind of the employees and facilities they work in. And I think that that should be a priority. And so I look forward to our next budget season as well, and looking at how we prioritize, because it's not just the DPS facility, it's our police department. We've been doing some patchwork with our fire department, things like that. And we really need to focus on those things and do right by the people who do the work for our citizens. So, because I know we all appreciate them, and we want them to work in a safe environment. So it's definitely a priority.
Thank you. Other comments or discussion or questions from council?
I guess a couple things that was not discussed, and some of the residents brought it up. I was wondering, can we speak about the negotiations that happened with the property? And can we address why we chose, why Brian Jones Chance was chosen? So that it's, what Mr. Bart told us in closed session.
So I can speak towards why Brian Jones Chance was chosen. In August, well, actually prior to that, but in August, when I became interim city manager, Director Wessler approached me about the need for this, and I went on a tour of the DPS facility, and I saw the condition that it was in. And then we kind of talked about Brian a little bit, and then we submitted a question to the attorney if that would be all right. And he said with Brian's knowledge of the city, he'd be a reasonable choice. So that's why I moved forward with Mr. And then the other question, the negotiations, after it was decided that 580 wasn't going to go through, DPS staff went into 599. They initially quoted, I believe, 4.1 million, and then we negotiated them down to 3.7.
Are we able to?
Yeah, it's your meeting.
If you have something to say about the negotiations, you.
Okay, I'm Brian Jones Chance. Just for the record, I was a commercial real estate broker before I was on council and during council, and I still am while I'm not on council. The process, started with, I guess I'll just go back and just give everyone an overview of how it worked. I think that's what people mainly want to know. When I was approached in August, I was a little surprised because while I was on council, I assumed we didn't have any money. So we initially started looking at building leases in order to kind of just tide things over while the current facility was being patched up. Unlike residential real estate, commercial brokers, don't have any agreements with each other that they have to show each other's properties. No one has to even answer your call if they don't want to. And so even listed properties, you don't always have access to. So we explored properties both within the city and in the adjacent townships, and some pretty far out. Properties mainly for lease. A lot of them were already sold or already leased or under contract, and have subsequently sold. So we went with an option that we hoped would work because we didn't really know the condition of the inside, but we did know that it was recently occupied and it was close to the current facility, and that was the Michigan Ladder. The conditions were what they were. I'll put it that way. Certainly not worth what they were asking, and really not worth in staff's mind pursuing. We approached 580 South Mansfield again with the intention of leasing. It took a couple of weeks to persuade them to allow us to tour the property because they were negotiating another land contract deal with someone at the time. And from what I was told, that was at a significant down payment and obviously a very good interest rate, and they were interested in continuing to pursue that deal. And we were only looking to lease. We toured the property. Staff found that it was suitable or could be made so. And in discussions about leasing, ultimately decided that purchasing made more sense. Just because of it could be a long-term site, and mathematically that seemed to work out better. We were able to persuade the sellers to temporarily put their buyer on ice and accept an offer, well, sort of an offer from the city. The way it had to be structured is they had to sign first, and we used the time pressure of our meeting schedule or your meeting schedule to get them to actually sign. They did that in the between time from, I think, 2 weeks ago, when there was a meeting planned, and earlier this week, an unsolicited offer came in, which is part of the danger, I think, which is why the Open Meetings Act explicitly allows us or allows you to review contracts in closed session. That information had been made public. We got an unsolicited offer from the current owner of 599 for 5 or 4.1. Initially, my modus operandi is love the one you're with, stick to the deal you've got, hunt 2 rabbits, catch none, that sort of thing. Staff wanted to tour the building, mostly because it had recently come up for site plan review. Building department staff knew the building intimately, and did the walkthrough. My recommendation at that time was still, the less expensive building, but staff was able to do the math and turned out that 580 was not the least expensive building overall, and decided to pursue 599. We did some negotiation again using the pressure of this meeting and the existence of another offer to get them to act quickly and to reduce their price. Issue going forward, obviously, is because we're in the situation now. Earlier this week, I did have to notify the sellers of 580. That transaction is no longer an option. Likewise, anything that's done purchase-wise is going to be a similar scenario. The price to the city of the limited industrial properties we have available to us is going to be what it's going to be. And it doesn't get better from here. And that was my argument during 580 before 599. It doesn't get better, and it's not going to get better going forward in terms of upfront cost. We have limited industrial property in the city. Most cities do, because industrial properties tend to be on the outskirts and only in certain areas. One thing I can't do as a broker is create more land. And I'm not a construction company, so I can't build new buildings on land that exists. That's one of the dry spots on South Mansfield, which is one of our only industrial parks. There is not availability in nearby spots in the township. There are things on Airport Boulevard, which is sort of off of Wide, if you're familiar with where the old Xanadu roller rink used to be. But the one that's available there is $5 million. And on smaller area, does not have the clear height that we need, does not have access for the trucks, just not going to work. Other buildings on Michigan Ave have already sold. So that's how we got to where we are. And I'm happy to discuss any more transaction details or anything like that if you guys have questions about it.
Thank you for that, Councilmember D. Simmons.
All right, good evening, everyone. So my notes are a little scattered here. And so they're not going to be very elegant, but we'll get through them together. You know, I recognize very much the extreme lack of trust that the community has in council. I was in your shoes just literally a year ago, just a year in the seat. And so I recognize, and I also recognize that part of this is actually part of larger issues around democratic practice, seeing elected officials, seeing what our government is doing at many different levels, and having general distrust. And so just want to name that. And especially, you know, I've heard a lot of folks say, you know, that this is going to be just like Water Street. And so again, recognizing that there's this foundation where folks have a lack of trust in decision making. Of course, Water Street was purchased back in the 90s when, so, I mean, some people on council weren't even born yet, you know, like when Water Street was even purchased. So, but to also name that this isn't exactly like Water Street. Water Street was purchased with the idea of developing it, selling it, and making money again for the city. Whereas this is a different situation where we're looking to purchase property for immediate use for the city purposes, and with a direct and specific plan for usage. And recognizing, you know, when I also think about, like, I understand the sense about urgency, haste, whatever that looks like. And even before I was on council, during budget sessions, because I listened to them, I would come, the departments would always bring this up. This is not, they would ask for money. And one of the things that I know is infrastructure is not sexy. This is why our roads are the way they are. Almost no one says, yes, please fix this building for our workers. And well, we haven't. Council has not for decades, is my point. And what I know is when I first started, after my first early meeting, I was invited to go to the site and take a tour and to see the conditions. So that was again a year ago. And the conditions were bad. And really that was done to say, we want everybody to understand the situation so that you all do something. So we put money forward. But, you know, even when we're going through our process, we're talking about things when people reach out to us. You know, we went through goal setting last time. We went through budget last time. We talk about all these things. The departments put out their information. You know, I didn't have time to pull up the receipts to be like, here's each time that it's come up actually during those processes for everyone to have seen that they were asking, begging for resource, naming all of issues. I mean, I go into a building and I'm like, yeah, this building feels like it's about to literally fall over. And so recognizing that it is possible that we do not, as the general public, understand how dire things look, period, because we're not in it. And it's not the kinds of things that people tend to want to spend money on. And so I recognize that this has been an issue that has been passed down from generations of council, and it doesn't look good to have to resolve past issues. Just because was not my responsibility that we didn't take care of the issue back in the day doesn't mean that it's not my responsibility to address issues now. I recognize that. I recognize how it looks. I do. And also sometimes it's buried when this has come forward. It's been buried because there's been other things to come forward that people come to the space to talk about. I also want to name when we're talking about the cost, let's think about how much of our city services are actually situated within DPS? How much of them are provided by DPS? What would it mean to us as a community if DPS has to shut down? What would it mean to us as a community for us to see a lack of services or go down, for us to say, oh, it snows and now our streets are just like Ann Arbor's? Like, that's disgusting. It's awful. It's actually not a good precedent. Is that something that we are willing to take? If we, for instance, say, let's just take a different process, let's extend this out, would all of our speakers come back and speak in support of this project, even if it doubles in costs? Would people come back and say, yes, we appreciate this process, we appreciate it being able to be heard, we appreciate time, and we are going to accept an increase in cost? Because these are the choices. It's not like, I mean, I know, I don't know commercial markets as well, right? I know what the residential market looks like. I know that when you put down an offer and then they're like, oh, somebody can give me a bigger offer, they're gonna go with that. And what I also know, when we look around, not only here, but in other places, we can see here in the city of Ypsilanti that people are very willing to sit on property. We can look around and we can see that people are owning buildings and they're very happy to just sit on it and not lease it, to price it expensively so that it's not actually affordable to people who want to open a business. They're willing to sit on that property until they get what it is that they want for it. That is the situation too, right? And so some of these properties, you know, so it's like this property that we didn't know was available before, they're probably very fine just saying, fine, you don't want it, we will sit on it. And so nothing will happen there. And it will continue to not necessarily happen. Like, it's not necessarily that they're going to go look for new buyers. They will just sit there until somebody else comes, and then they'll probably ask for even more. The issue is also when we are looking at what our options are and recognizing what our needs are, recognizing what we need to have fit, right? We can't just create the perfect location out of thin air. And that matters when we talk about market, when people talk about like how a market works, right? It's supply and demand. If there's little supply and our demand becomes more desperate, the price will go up. If you only have two options and they're just competing against one another, they will play the price up. I mean, this is not, this is just basic supply demand situation. When we talk about what is possible, I think that this is something that is important. And I also want to name one of my duties on city council. It's not necessarily my favorite duty. My favorite duty is, of course, talking to you beautiful people. One of my duties is also to minimize risk to the city for increased cost, not only in terms of building, but in terms of liability, in terms of worker safety. One of the things that came up, and one of the staff people said this during our meeting on Tuesday, which was that, because because as people have been sending questions and calling me and all these things, I take those calls, I take those questions, and I've been feeding them back. I've been putting it back out into to get answer. One of the things people have said is like, well, I know somebody who can do that roof for less than $500,000 and within, 5 minutes, I know somebody who has this expertise and they can do this for this and that and that. And so I brought that forward, and the staff person said that one of the concerns is that we talk about not wanting to do Water Street again. We don't want to do Thompson Block again. And one of the concerns is that because of trying to do something less expensively, that somebody lost their life. And we cannot put a price on that. And those are the kind of costs that we're talking about in terms of how to do something well and safely, and taking into consideration all of the complications of the space, which is hard to know when you're not in it and looking at it. And I know that even when we're talking about a roof, and then they're like, oh, well, there's actually a gas line in the roof. I'm like, why is that? Like, but these are just part of part of the things that we don't necessarily see or know until we're in it. And what I do know is that, looking at this information, that these considerations have been happening. They didn't start off saying, hey, how can we go and spend millions of dollars on from the city's backs? They've been used to being a department that has actually been holding the austerity that the city has been putting upon them for decades. When I went and I heard about some of the ways that people were doing their work, I was like, wouldn't it be me? It wouldn't be me. And so it's really easy for us to say, let's just postpone it a little bit more and let's just wait and see. But it's not us. It's not us. I'm not being lowered into a hole because my equipment has failed. This is the situation that they've been going on for decades. Some people who've come and talked to us were on council and have been responsible for putting us in this situation. And now in 2023, we have to do something. I also want to speak as folks are talking about, like, I understand, Brian, it's come up. This was a question that I had when I found out, which I found out when looking at the contract for the meeting that was originally scheduled for the special meeting that was that last Monday that got canceled. That was one of my early questions. What does this look like? And for people who would know who I am, what I was doing before I was sitting on this seat, and the history of how early on in Mr. Jones-Chance's time on council, how he rejected work that I had done as a volunteer for free for the city to save the city money. The city wanted to use money that was able to purchase property that now Avalon Housing is developing for affordable housing. I said, I will volunteer my time for 2 years, y'all, 2 years, in order to save that money so it can go to actually build affordable housing, which is what it went to do. And one of the first things that happened was that was put aside and denied and disrespected. So I understand how that feels. Okay, I understand how that feels. And also know it is not my intention to put any coins in Brian Jones-Chance's pockets. I want those in one of my pockets, y'all. Okay, but they don't. I don't get paid enough, but that's a whole nother thing. That is not my position. That is not what I would try to do. And I very much am watching and want to be sure. But just the same as folks said, we look at our talent that's here in the city, where we know, who we know, and we ask them for help and support. Brian Jones-Chance is also a part of that community. He's a professional commercial realtor. He's not on council now.
We're not gonna.
We are in a small city. If we cannot do more than one thing at one time, like, please know that if I'm not on council at some time, I'm gonna be coming back. I'm still around. I was doing work before council. I am doing work after.
Your comments, and let's not respond to the audience.
So the point is that this is part of understanding these things. When we went through our most recent budget process and we were going through our goal setting process, I remember when this happened was that we were going through a process. We were in our second reading maybe. And in the second reading, there were some big ticket items that were added to our budget, both of which were for important infrastructure pieces that staff were like, we're not passing this budget without putting these on. These are must-dos, which included the roof at the DPS facility. And I say that because, yes, we knew this is important. We see this happening. But again, we don't get feedback. We're pushing. So I'm like, what are things that I'm hearing people say that they want to see? That's what I'm bringing forward. Okay. And so those are the priorities because we're trying to represent our people. But we have to understand that we also have to represent our workers. And so, but that got added. So I'm just naming this again. This was also part of that. We knew that this was an issue when it was an emergency roof replacement necessary. I'm trying to see if these cool. A question. Oh, another thing that folks have brought up is about the tax rolls. And so we did ask about that as well. And when we looked at it, so this property is we currently get around like $20,000 in taxes from that property. So just so folks have a sense of what amount we're talking about in terms of what that looks like. And I think that, having, I think that $20,000 goes quickly when we think about what it could mean in terms of having a safer, happier crew. So that for all the services that we count on, including recycling pickup, yard waste pickup, mowing, snow removal, salting the roads, fixing potholes, putting curb cuts, many, many, many more things, right? So I think that will probably, I would say probably be recouped pretty quickly. I think that's a lot for now. I might have some questions, but I just wanted to kind of respond to some of those pieces because I do feel like it's important for us to understand the wideness of this. And I also just want to say, and this is maybe inappropriate, but we're in a time of worker unions and understanding the power of what that means. And so I think we also have to consider that too.
Thank you. Are there other comments or questions from City Council? Councilmember Slate, that is your name. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to rehash some of the things that were said, and we all know through Director Wessler's presentation what the drastic needs are, obviously. After kind of looking, right, all the numbers that have been presented and brought to us, purchase price, future investment in this property, what we're looking to spend long term, what the future of the forest site may be. It just at this point doesn't seem like we have the financial capability to purchase a property of this magnitude in cash and commit to the investment that comes with it. Do we need it? Absolutely. 100%. We needed it years ago. Obviously, we all agree with that part. There's not a doubt that about that, but the purchase price, what we're committing to long term, I don't know that we have the sustainability to do that. Is there going to be some large dollar expenses that are going to need to take place to, if we maintain operation at this Forest Avenue facility that we've operated out of for years? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of need. Could we potentially find the new building with different financing terms? Yes, like there's options that I think need to be considered. I just don't know that at this point in time, with the amount that we're looking at and how we're going about the purchase, if it's in the best interest of the city's future. And I say that not to discredit any of the work of the staff that have put in decades long work into the operations and the needs of this city. Right, looking at the resources that have been used and what you've been able to do with those is mind-blowing. I think a lot of other people would have not been able to pull those things off. So I don't want this to come at a disservice to you, whatever happens tonight. I think that there's, the need that the department has, is going to be pushed to, service deficiencies with, residents as well. So there, may be some, right, obviously significant changes as we're heading into the winter season that have already been discussed that, we foresee having difficulties with. But we have to realize, that those may exist, and this is, there are repercussions to obviously any decision that we come to this evening. But at the end of the day, again, I just don't know that this is in our best interest at this time.
Thank you. The members of council who may have other comments, I'm gonna try to see if folks who haven't spoken yet want to give comment at all. And before I give comment. Okay,
I spoke already, but I do have a question.
Please.
If this does not pass, what does that mean for services going forward?
I don't even know if there's a.
There is no way to operate a functional DPS with existing buildings. There's no way to safely operate. Full stop. 6 months ago, the building official took a informal walkthrough. The fire marshal took an informal walkthrough. I walked through a couple weeks ago with the fire chief. We should have been shut down. There is no way to ever operate out of that.
Can I add to that now?
Sure, Councilmember DeSantis.
So I just this was the other thing I missed in my notes, which is to say that we've talked about people like in terms of like partnerships, contractors, things of that sort. Also to note that within our contract with our DPS workers, if we get contractors to do different things, we still pay them. So we would be both paying our workers as well as paying for contract services on top of that, as well as still having obviously the same issues, right? Like it doesn't make the issues go away. And so recognizing that, again, it's still a financial commitment. It doesn't swap out. So I just wanted to make that clear too.
Thank you. Mr. Barr, sure.
I'd like to mention a couple of things and some of the issues that have been raised. I'd like to start out with the beginning. And I was approached some time ago by the staff indicating that the city was looking for property and how to do it. I indicated there were a number of ways. You can put out an advertisement, ask for offers, or you can hire a professional to go look for it. And the question came up with the professional. I indicated that you can advertise for professionals, or a professional, you do not have to take out bids. You can pick a professional based on their experience and so on. And then the second question was, could they consider Brian Jones Chance, a former council member? And I said that there was no legal impediment to that. In some cases, it's good to have someone that has personal knowledge of the area. in regard to the method of the reason that we're here today, the action that was taken by city council was subject to the approval of the city attorney. And we had a closed session, and at the audience participation, the mayor, a former mayor, questioned whether that was proper. And the Open Meetings Act provides that the city council can go into closed session to consider a purchase of property up until the time that there is a option acquired. An option is an offer that cannot be revoked. There was no option acquired. There was an offer, but it was not in the form of an option. City council did go into closed session. And then they came back into open session, and the meeting had been, the closed session took a long time, and there was a lot of audience participation and so on that extended the meeting into the wee hours of the evening and the morning, actually. And so the action was subject to the approval of the city attorney. The next morning I looked at it, and I decided that I could not approve the contract as it was for two reasons. One, there was a claim that the Open Meetings Act had been violated by the closed session. I don't believe that was true, but I thought if the former mayor is saying that, we'll probably get sued. And the second thing was that the citizens want transparency. And I didn't feel that the meeting last night was transparent. And so I contacted Brian Jones-Chance and said, do not deliver the contract. And I contacted the manager and the council and said, please set up a meeting to reconsider and have all of the facts come out, have Bonnie give her presentation and so on. And that's the reason that we're here now. I'd like to mention also Council Member Desiree Simmons said that she feels different, or she looks at things differently now that she's on the council. And I think that's true all the time. It's very different looking in than looking out. And you have to make that decision. So I asked for the reconsider so we could have this meeting so everything could come out.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay. Okay, so many things have been said. I'm not going to repeat all of them. There are things that I agree with in everybody's comments, honestly. So I have questions based upon if this goes either way. And my first question is, I don't know if this would be for Mr. Jones-Chance or for our city or our city staff, but around the negotiations piece. Because I think that one thing that made me uncomfortable on Tuesday, even the way that it went and still, is looming, is the price and the amount that they purchased it for. And I get supply and demand, all of that, but wondering, I may be answering my own question, but if there's absolutely no possibility for further negotiation for this property. Because I think that would be my first starting point.
Yeah, I can speak to that. On this property, because of the action taken on Tuesday, and like Mr. Barr said, I wasn't, I was here till midnight, got the signed document. I was not, I was notified by Mr. Barr not to deliver that contract around, 6:30 or so. And I did not. Because of that, however, I did have a duty of fairness to the other party in the transaction. I let them know that they did not win out in the process. They had another buyer already on the hook that, like I explained before, they were working with. They're now with that buyer.
580.
Yes.
Okay.
So $599 is the only option. Because this is now aired out, and the document's not signed, honestly, they have no reason to even honor the contract they have.
So, okay, that's a different.
So that's one part of it.
What I'm asking though is we're assuming they don't have to, but is that a possibility? Is it possible for us to go back to them and say, these are the circumstances, are you willing? I know
Well,
it's
I guess
heavy in
what
your
I'm,
social work
yeah,
brain, but
what I'm trying to, I guess what I'm trying to explain is the circumstances are not advantageous for us.
okay.
The leverage that we had was in the timing. The leverage that we had was pitting them against
The other deal.
580.
Correct. Understood.
Yeah. So the possibilities would be that we could continue to search, or we could always ask. I'm just lawfully I will follow any of your lawful instructions, but I'm just giving you my advice as what is likely to happen.
Okay. So that is what is likely to happen, but doesn't mean
Does
that it is
not mean there's zero chance.
possibly. Okay.
There's always a
I
chance.
think so. I believe that. Okay. My second question, this may also be for you then, or for our staff. Why was a cash purchase the decision rather than financing? Because I didn't understand that either.
Well, the city's options for financing are a little bit limited, but I'll
Yeah.
I'll let staff speak to that.
Said out loud.
Yes.
Yes.
We could, if it's amended, we could go into financing. We'd have to, I believe we had to, and we'd have to do a bond out or something, or we'd have to do an RFP for some type of financial advisor, similar to, I think Reagan's here. Reagan, to get financing on this, what would we go about doing?
Oh, okay. So, okay, I don't know if that, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the other thing I think it's important to address, just because we've heard it in public comment, was around the due diligence period. And so for folks that are mostly familiar with residential real estate, the due diligence process in a commercial transaction can take months. And oftentimes it does. It's very extensive in many cases. In some cases not. With industrial, it tends to be. I will say 90% of that time process, however, is waiting. You're waiting on mostly information from municipalities. You're waiting for maybe a phase 1 to be done. If the site is known to be contaminated, and the EPA keeps the list that we checked, prior. For this site, however, we are very fortunate in that most of that waiting comes when you're approaching municipalities to verify information, or in the case of investment property, when you're trying to get information on income and expenses. In this case, the city owns the information because the city created it, and what would have taken me 2 weeks took Bonnie 5 minutes. She just went upstairs and got the information. It's also was helpful that the city is the entity that developed the site originally. And so a lot of those factors were already known. It was also helpful that the owner of 599 had recently been before the planning commission, had submitted a site plan, and it had several inspections prior to that. Otherwise, the process would have been much longer.
Thank you. Now my question for staff. So I'm sorry, no, you cannot. I apologize. So with the 3.7 million that we would be purchasing the property for, the total on the chart originally that we received from staff was 7.5 in total, with updates that would need to happen to fit it, right, to make it proper, suitable. We had talked about the timeline for that other basically $4 million. Can we talk about the timeline publicly for what that would look like when these updates would need to be done, and how we would be funding that additional $4 million?
Well, we'd have to probably wait a few years before we can do those additional updates. The 3.7, especially in cash, would hit our fund balance pretty significantly. We wouldn't be able to do further updates for a number of years.
And so for the time being, some of the components that would not be updated on the new site would still either be in partnership elsewhere or from the current site.
Correct.
We could actually maintain most of our operations. But as the area is most critical to day-to-day operations, for specifically that price suppression for.
Okay. walk with me, talk with me. I'm sorry, but I just need to walk this through. In any respect, if we move to 599 within the 1 to 3 months that was stated, there would still be certain things though, whether we stay there or we move, that would have to be partnered to, like the salt and some other things, or no, because we won't have a salt barn at 599. So we'd either need to utilize, which we shouldn't utilize the one that we have now, but we'd have to partner with EMU, or I can't remember the other place that made offers. We would still be using our own fuel pumps at 14 West Forest or fire. Okay, so there would be interim needs no matter what, whether we move or we stay. Salt barn duration. Okay. Okay. How long? Okay. Okay. I need a pause. Sorry. Anybody else have questions or comments? Further comments, questions? Anyone need a break? I feel like I do. I think I need a few minutes. I apologize, audience, but this is a really big decision, and I do feel like I need a second to think this through. So I'm going to call a 10-minute recess, and we will come back to this. Thank you. Okay. All right. So we are still currently in discussion, questions, comments. And if there are none. Oh, Councilor J.
Oh, sorry. I almost feel like this is one of the hardest decisions I've made. I feel damned if I do, damned if I don't. Because I value our staff, I value the work they do, and I want them to do it safely. And I want to advocate for them. And I think we're very limited with options for this type of facility. And I think one thing people don't appreciate is that, I think we deliver pretty darn good services considering the conditions, but also because we are so centrally located in our city. And if we are to be outside the city or have one part over here, one part over there, that does have an impact on services. Water Street building there, that would be great in some ways, but then for the several years it would take to get all that done, what are we doing in the meantime? And, it's if we contract that out, but we still have to pay our employees. And is that how we also really want to treat our employees? But also being fiscally responsible. And is this the best way to do this? Or is this the best deal? I mean, I don't know what other deals are going to be out there from a commercial property standpoint. So I have a lot going through my mind, and it's really hard. It's really, really hard. City manager, I want to understand again, just our options for paying for something like this.
Well, the way the contract's written, it would be it's a cash purchase. I was talking to the finance director, and we could do something similar that we did do to buy a property in the past, is we could finance it. We'd have to start examining that immediately tomorrow, if that's the way council would want to go. And then so I'd work with the city attorney to try to find the finance director to try and find the best course of action to do that.
One of my things I've for everything that I vote on, the one thing I don't want to do is bankrupt this city. Sure. And so that's my concern here. And I understand, because earlier this year we were doing, during budget season, we had to make some pretty hard decisions about funding this, funding that. And, for me, I always want to focus on our core services and doing those things well, and having our staff having the resources, the equipment, and to be able to do those things safely so that we can deliver good services. And we've had to make tough decisions. And so I have to be honest, I'm a little bit confused as to how now, we kind of have money.
So since fiscal year 14-15, the fund balance has been growing. It started, I can't recall but last fiscal year it was 13.3 million. And then we're forecasted 10.8 next year. So it's just through in 2018 with I'm sorry, 2017, the passage of the Water Street millage helped bring the city afloat. And that has just grown because we haven't been able to fill positions. So that has just been added to. So that will continue to grow until we have all of our positions filled, and then there'll start a slight decrease until we are able to balance our operational budget without using the general fund.
And what is our fiscal obligation, under state law for maintaining for the fund, like balance that would keep us within what we're obligated to do?
What is it again, Reagan?
26 months, which is just advice from your board. I think it's around 3,750,000 of our unassigned balance as of now. So 3,750 around.
Can you speak?
Oh, sorry. Yes, so MGFOA's recommended fund balance is around 3 to 6 months of your operations. Our operations is around 14 million a year. So we should have at least around 3,750,000 at least in our unassigned fund balance.
Okay. All right. So we would be still meeting our our responsibility.
So
statutory.
what city manager has shared is that we had 13.3 million as of the last. We are still under audit, so this might still change. But out of that 13.3 million, we have around 8.8 million of unassigned fund balance, which we are planning to use for if we're planning to purchase this property. So that's where it's gonna come from.
Oh, Councilmember D. Simmons, you have a question?
Yeah, I wonder about, so there was the question around, for instance, the remediation that, we would still need to do for 14 West. And I'm just interested in hearing about whether there's opportunities and things for other funding for that. Like, that's what my understanding is, but just want to check about what kind of possibilities we would be able to look into for things like that.
So I've talked with the representative for the Washington County Development. They routinely talk things like phase 1 and phase 2, and in fact, that is how we are paying for the phase 1 of the current DPW facility. We'll likely be funding the phase 2 of the current DPW facility at Moore Park. If the city chooses to redevelop it on its own at 14 West Forest, then we will be liable for the cleanup because we will be the responsible party. If we sell the site, the developer then can take on that responsibility and incorporate those costs into a brownfield. So we would lose ongoing tax revenue from that because of the brownfield tip capture, but overall it would be an out-of-pocket cost for the city.
Thank you. That's helpful. And then I also just, in just a couple of conversations and things that we were just talking about during the break, just to share that, when thinking about the fund balance and what we could use it for, something that I just want to share at this point so people understand my commitment to is that, I do believe that that there should be some, ability for the public to help make some of our decisions around how some of our funds are spent. And so that's something that I feel committed to continuing to pursue, both as a way to help build trust, but for folks to be able to help make some of these decisions and to understand, some of these trade-offs, and also to being able to put in, see something move through that we really need and want. And then there also was a concern about how if we with 14 West, if we abandon that site, which I also want to say, based on what we've heard, we know that some parts of that site will still be in use in the interim regardless. And so it won't be fully abandoned yet, but there was concern about adding a blighted property into Ward 3 and thinking about how long it might take for it to be developed or things like that. And so that's something that, I think is really important and that I feel really committed to tracking. Like, it's not something that I think will drop. Like, I feel committed to helping to work through all of these pieces and learning what I need to do. For me, I think that's how I've done so many things so far is to find the information, work it through into completion. And so I just want to put that out there for Ward 3 residents that I'm committed to this process, seeing it through and making sure that whatever comes, like that, if we do have an opportunity to add a new amenity, a new attraction, a new use for that site, that I'm going to keep working on that because it's right down the street from where I live. So I'm not interested in seeing it go into disuse and any further disrepair. I'm actually interested in seeing it rebound and be useful and things of that sort. So I just wanted to share that, those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments from council? Oh, city manager?
So the issue that I think keeps coming up is process. And that was probably the fault of staff, is we should have done this right from the beginning. We should have done an RFP for a professional realtor or a real estate attorney. But we felt, since we all know Brian and trusted him, and I guess we were blind to the optics that this would look like. But one thing is definitely true. DPS needs a new facility. They need something. I'm not sure if, how we went about it in the beginning may have increased the price, but it is what it is now. And I feel bad for council. This is very difficult. It's difficult for me because this is such an immense number to me, but again, maybe it's not. I don't have any real estate background. That's why I wish we would have followed a better process in the beginning, because then maybe all of these questions would have been answered before tonight or Tuesday. So one thing is true, no matter what happens, we are going to do something to put DPS in a better situation, to bring things up to code and make sure that they can be successful at their jobs. That's, I think, our duty to them. And no matter what happens, that is going to be what we do for that department and all our departments. For many years, actually the entire time I've worked here, we've operated under the sense of not have any funds to do anything. And as a result, everything is falling apart. So with that said, this is a tough decision. This is a big hit to our fund balance, but at the same time, it could be a travesty if we don't do something about it.
Thank you.
No, thank you for that. That's my, in many ways, I think we should be ashamed of ourselves for how we've allowed the facilities to decline. And we have this poverty mentality here in this city. And sometimes we have to invest, right, to be able to do, so we can do better. And we haven't, I feel like my profession is HR, right? So I'm always thinking about employees, and we need to do better for our employees. And that's what allows us to do better for our citizens. And I have real concerns about just the safety, the facilities, how they feel valued. Lord knows, you can go someplace else, and we've lost a lot of people because a place pays better. And what we have here are a lot of employees who are really committed to this city. And I value that as a council member, but also as a citizen, you know? And so in some ways you can't put a number on that. And I just think it's time that we really look at, you know, kind of valuing that and the people who do the hard work, you know, here in this city. And like I said, just even from a safety standpoint, I'm also a lawyer, so I just think about liability, and I think there's just a lot there. I don't know where we get something better. You know, I'm not a commercial real estate, you know, a real estate person either, but you know, the price is what the price is, right? I don't know. This is very difficult, but I'm in some ways I'm more concerned about what happens otherwise too.
Thank you. All right, let's go around here. Any other comments, question, or discussion?
I'm just gonna say, we've kicked this can so far down the road. You know what I mean? I just feel like I don't know that we can go any further down the road. Not just this facility either.
Right. All right. Okay. Clerk Smith, call the roll.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Pass.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Sorry, this is Trevor. Yeah. I'm gonna pass at the moment. I have to really think this through. Sorry.
Councilmember King,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
No.
Mayor Brown, Councilmember Sweet,
No.
Councilmember Tucson, Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Sorry. Just, I need a second, please. No. No.
Or no's, the motion fails.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen. You have the next resolution.
Resolution number 2023-217, resolution to amend the general fund budget to transfer $3,700,000 to capital improvement fund for purchase of 599 South Mansfield. Is resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that whereas city council determines that the purchase of 599 South Mansfield, Ypsilanti, Michigan 48197 is necessary for the continued operation of the Ypsilanti Department of Public Service, and whereas the property at 599 South Mansfield is suitable and available for purchase, and whereas city council has authorized. We even have to do this.
Read the rest in the record if you'd like.
City council was authorized to purchase 599 Mansfield, and a budget amendment is required to transfer funds in the purchase. Now therefore, council authorizes a budget adjustment to transfer funds from the general fund to the capital improvement fund account 414-2652-970-03 in the amount $2,950,000. Scratch that, $3,700,000 for the purchase of 599 South Mansfield, Ypsilanti, Michigan 48197, and I so move.
I believe what you actually need is a motion to rescind, right?
They can vote and just everyone say that.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. I'm assuming there's no discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember King,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen, Mayor Brown,
No.
Councilmember Sweet,
No.
Councilmember Tucson, Councilmember D Simmons,
No.
Councilmember J Simmons.
No.
7 no's, the motion fails.
This is our second opportunity for public comment. You'll have 3 minutes to address council. I will go with hands that I see in the audience. Mr. Pierce.
This is not a time for any sort of celebration at all. And I understand how hard this was. There is no winners in this, and especially no winners with our city staff. The reason that I wanted to come up was I wanted to take Councilmember Simmons' challenge to stand here and take her challenge and say, yes, I will stand with you. And yes, we will fix this. And there are lots of folks that have some really good ideas. And one of the ones that I want to suggest just quickly tonight is the school district has tons of classrooms that are heated, plenty of bathrooms in several different areas, and we can get people into safe offices while we
Your school doesn't even.
can work on other things to make to come up with a plan that we can afford that provides a safe working environment and the services we need. But again, this is not a time of celebration, and I am grateful for your service tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honestly, the municipally prudent decision was to fund the new building. The politically prudent decision was to shoot it down because of the fact that there is an information discrepancy. You simply all were in an impossible position. And I am deeply sorry that that has happened to you. Please do right by city staff. They deserve to be safe. They deserve to be cared for. And I thank all of you for your deep consideration on this matter.
Mr. Tucson.
Tough decision, huh? Real tough decision, I'm sure. But you guys gotta understand one thing. It was a decision that you guys wanted. It was not a decision that the public wanted, the taxpayers wanted. It wasn't that. But I guess it was a tough decision for y'all. But now, I wonder the decision gonna be as tough when the residents ask you to sweep the streets. Is it gonna be real tough when they ask you to trim the trees so the old lady doesn't have to duck her head when she go under the seat on the sidewalk? I wonder is it gonna be that tough? I wonder is it gonna be tough when Miss Johnson says, Lee, this sidewalk is higher than the other one. That thing needs to be fixed. I wonder is it gonna be tough? No, that one won't be tough. It's gonna say, Miss Johnson, fix it yourself. Decision that you guys wanted.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address council? I would like to submit my resignation effective December 31st. This is an unconscionable decision.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Harold Smith. I've been with the city for almost 23 years. And while most of you get to go home at night, and some of us have to go to work the next day in fear, but you guys passed this to stand down or whatever you want to call it. I think that it's unfair that I have to work in fear every day. So congratulations.
Thank you. Other members of the public, Mr. Jones Jr.
So we're to do this on this side. I guess I'll tell you, there were a lot of questions about, what's on the market, yada, yada. You guys are constrained by how much, or by the fact that you need to locate either in the city or maybe on a parcel immediately adjacent. There's nothing. And my fear, and you all know that I am a well-known cheapskate, and any opportunity to spend less money, as long as it made sense, I'm for it. But we've got to get away from this idea that government is supposed to act like a business and get paid back. It's not. You're providing a service. And the purpose of your fund balance is not to have a fund balance. It's money held in trust for the public to be spent for them. And not spending it for them and not spending it for our staff doesn't make a lot of sense. So I would urge one of you to reconsider the motion. And one, don't let your DPS director leave. She does a lot more for the city than just be a DPS director. Don't lose your DPS staff. As it stands right now, with the motion you just passed, as it stands right now, we're going to lose services, period. For some undetermined amount of time. And without Bonnie there to lead any kind of a transition out of that scenario, it's going to be longer than it would be with her there. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'm as cheap as anybody. And you all know that. But this doesn't make financial sense. It just does not. Reconsider the motion and fix this before it gets bad.
Thank you. Mrs. Tucson.
This was a night, I am not counsel, but I sat here and I felt your pain. And while I know decisions are hard, we must think about our employees. We cannot afford to lose Bonnie. We cannot afford to lose employees. Losing employees means that we lose more services. And I understand my fellow, residents coming in and talking about this huge amount of money that they're thinking is going to have to be spent. But sometimes money is not the only thing. We have to think about people. Health and safety is very, very important when it comes to employees. If, God forbid, tomorrow a crew goes into that building and something happens and we lose people, we're going to spend much more money. We saw our police department dispatching go to the county. That was huge. And it affects, even today, the level of services and response that we have in the city. We saw so many things happen that we had to bear the burden, the painful burden. And so to hear Bonnie come up here and say that she will retire or quit by December 31st, what do you think her subordinates are going to do when they're the ones that are going through this on a daily basis? These folks, there was a recommendation to use classroom at the schools. These aren't office people. They are boots on the ground, hands in the dirt. This is what they do. They don't sit behind desk. And so, like Brian has said, reconsider. We need to let our people know that we appreciate them. We appreciate the work that they do. And in as much as we fuss about sweeping streets and cutting trees, just imagine if we lost even more. And so I get it. That sounds like a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it's not. We need to support the people who are in place to support us. And I'm asking that council reconsider, because at the end of the day, don't worry. Let's not worry too much about what our residents say. Yes, that's important. But at the end of the day, we have to show that we care for the people who support the residents and support the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Valerie Tucson, Ypsilanti.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Please.
It's on my heart. I'm Frida Clausen, and I own rental properties in Ypsi and a building downtown Town, and a business as well. I own the Thrift Depot. And it seems like it's an all or nothing. I'm just not sure why it's an all or nothing scenario. It seems like, and I get property. My husband's a realtor and broker, own property in Ann Arbor as well. It's not the end of the world to allow a little more time, especially with so many folks coming out of the woodwork saying, I'm an expert in this and I'm an expert in that. I mean, to borrow from some expertise, and it's not a situation of employee safety. I mean, absolutely that's important. But as a building owner, I don't know why city buildings are allowed to not be up to code. I'm just ignorant that way, I guess. I don't understand why a building can be not in code and then employee safety that's holding other people to a standard that the city isn't holding itself accountable for. That's very confusing to me. I don't know enough about politics, I guess, but employees are important. But also, if this would go forward, what if the police department said that our deficiencies are equally as important and we're going to do a walkout? I don't know, throwing the towel. I really don't understand that concept. We're not going to have certain services if this doesn't pass. I'd like to think working together and using resources and allowing time will give a little more of an educated decision than a rush decision. I am just really learning a lot about this, but at the same time, collaboration, involvement of the community, discussion, not crammed sessions in a week. But those are just my thoughts. I feel that an answer can be worked through with just more involvement and utilizing other resources and time. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to reinvest in businesses that are wanting to leave IPSI. Community support. It's just a lot of money, And if I have to figure out how to come up with money to renovate my building without using other people's money, it feels like the city needs to figure out how to accomplish its objectives without depleting resources, because we never know when a great travesty could happen. If another pandemic comes up, or if other worse scenarios where we've depleted emergency funds. So, and if there isn't money, then I have to figure things out myself. I have to figure things out with my own funds.
Thank you.
That is our
Thank you.
funds. I don't even understand what that
Is
means.
there anyone you want to speak?
I literally don't understand what that means.
I'm really glad I came tonight. I think it would have been the right decision to buy the property. I think that moving forward, it will be really important to not only have the council regain the trust of the public in regards to being transparent, but it sounds like you guys were in the dark for a lot of this until recently as well. And I hope that that gets addressed very quickly. I think that that is why we didn't buy this. I think that is going to be a hard road forward, but thank you all for meeting tonight and caring so much about our city.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Is there anyone online with?
Yes, Amber Fellow.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Amber Fellows.
Hi, yes, I've been with you all night watching this, and yeah, I guess I feel like I'm talking to the audience as well. I just understand why this is being treated as Armageddon. I think you're in a better negotiation position at this point, in my opinion, because guess what? 599 South Mansfield can come back and counter offer at $2 million if they really want to sell this building to you. Maybe that's not the case, but I don't think this is a matter of people not wanting a building for DPS. Of course, myself personally would much rather spend our money on DPS than the Ypsilanti Police Department building improvements. And I think we should. It is a matter of process. That was where the error was. So I don't think anyone in the audience and the public should feel bad for coming out and questioning the process. It was bad. Staff knows it's bad. John Barr knows it's bad. And council, I think you did do the right decision in listening this time. In the past, when you haven't listened, there's been political consequences, as it should have happened. So I'm sorry that you're feeling bad about this. I'm sorry to the DPS staff that had to go through this. It's not the public's fault. It's not council's fault. It's like the whole process was bad. But you will get a building. It's going to happen. This was one offer and a rush offer, and there's going to be opportunities for others because that's what happens. All right. But I hope you have a good night.
Thank you. Anyone else on the lot? Okay.
Amanda Smith.
Yeah, I disagree that it puts us in a better negotiating position. The city is now in a desperate position, and I am really extremely disappointed in the actions of the council tonight, where I watched a group of people represent the interests of wealthy neighbors over the people that are actually putting in the work for our community as we enter winter season, where we need people the most. And I also want to point out that I know a lot of due diligence was done ahead of this proposal. And I read through all of it. I'm not there tonight because I'm solo parenting and I couldn't make it to a meeting with short notice like that. And I know that losing Bonnie Wessler would be a travesty for the city, and that she's probably brought in more grant money than the cost of this purchase. And I think you're making a huge mistake if you don't make this right immediately. So do the right thing.
Thank you.
And Tokars?
Madam Mayor and Council, starting tonight, I think you guys need to go back into session. I think you need to declare next steps, which would be a public emergency. I think we need to get out in front of this to the public, let them know what's going on, convene, put a group together of what services we are going to be able to provide, look at what we can do to the buildings. We can rent storage space for some of the items. I will email you tonight with the name of a company that does shoring. They can shore up the building, but I definitely think that you need to go and declare a public emergency, which gives you special duty or special rights, just so we can address this in a timely manner and not go through some of the steps and red tape that would prolong this for Ypsilanti residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth Gibbons.
I'm surprised by the decision that the council has taken tonight. I have heard this council, I think, wanting to act in a way that would be not reducing our care for people and not abdicating its responsibility to both the public and to the staff, for whom you are ultimately responsible for their care and well-being. And the decision to kind of see a process failure as something to put upon the shoulders of those who are first and foremost responsible for the public care in our community is incredibly disappointing. I do not know what your next steps can be for recourse, but I do know that the DPS team as a whole has been the stewards and caretakers not only of the brick and mortar of our community, but also issues that cut into deep where my work often lies in sustainability and how we think of our environment, equity, and in the economy. And they see those things holistically. They come out for that work consistently. They do that work over time. And I am really disappointed that the idea of a process failure would be sufficient to put a physical burden onto the people who work for this place.
Thank you.
Scott?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Scott Cooper. I'm a 18-year, I've worked for the city for 18 years. I'm the union president, TPOM. I'm a mechanic at the Department of Public Services. I'd like to speak on behalf of the union and of Bonnie Wessler, who has done so much for employee safety I'd like to talk about the ramifications of what would happen if we shut down, because we are partially shut down. We're packed like sardines in half a building. We can't work on our equipment. What that means is we're going to have to farm things out. It's going to cost a lot of money. We did everything in-house. You can't fit a 63,000-pound recycle truck in a classroom. I'm sorry to the gentleman that spoke earlier. But what we do, quite often we have things break and we have to fix them. And to keep things running, it's just not practical where we are now. And the safety, I have one exit out of my building currently. No fire suppression system, no emergency lighting. We can't function the way we are now. We need a new facility. And if we don't move now, everything's going to shut down. We're going to have to send things out. They're going to sit on a lot at another facility for 3 weeks while they wait for parts. These are desperate times. I'm not sure what else to say. The biggest thing is employee safety concerns from a union standpoint. I mean, if OSHA were to come in, they would find so many things that they would just shut us down right now. We're asking for council to do the right thing. We're giving them some time to move forward and make things right. Otherwise, I don't know, we're not going to be capable of providing the service that the services that we have. I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied because it's very emotional for me being an 18-year city employee and putting in the service that I have and the dedication that I have, that I feel like I'm being let down.
Yeah,
And that's all I have to say.
thank you.
Sarah Rowland.
I am not Sarah Rowland.
Sorry, same thing happened. You're next, Jesse. Sarah, you're up.
Hi, I just want to thank council for making a very tough decision tonight. That was one that listened to the majority of your community. I don't see this as a move against workers. I heard a lot of compassion and concern from both the audience and council tonight. I see it as a move against a bad deal. This was not the only option available. And the positive thing that happened is this put urgency in the public eye. It made this something you're not kicking the can down the road. Everyone is aware of the issue now, and we all want to see a resolution. And your decision tonight is a move to regain public trust by listening to your constituents. And I trust that we will see immediate action from council to ensure employee and facility safety and to try to move services forward. And I don't expect that this is, this decision, ended, trying to help workers or trying to increase safety. I think it just put it more out there. And I think there are still more options that we can explore and I expect to see explored. So thank you for making this difficult but important decision to listen to your constituents tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse Miller.
Good evening, Jesse Miller, Ward 2. I really regret that I wasn't able to participate in public comment today. There was an info session for the ride and I wanted to hear, I felt like it was important for me to be there to hear what people were saying. But I was with you 2 days ago and I thanked you all for the amazing work you've done to make this city a more pleasant place. And I was home in time to watch you exhibit utter disregard for the people who helped make so much of that happen. Our region is a case study in deferred maintenance, and I've talked with many of you about how you're in a position to do something about it, and it doesn't make a difference if you find yourself in that position and you don't do anything about it. And what I saw here was a team of dedicated and underappreciated staff who work here because they love their city, trying to find the best possible option after decades of neglect, trying to find a way that minimized the impact to the city, but it was just a necessary decision. And some people have arrived and said, you know, well, they have a great idea. If only, if only someone would listen to them, if only they worked for the city. But you hired this staff to be the experts in their field, and nothing they said wasn't true. Nothing they said wasn't right. And this is still the decision you made. And I'm unhappy about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan or Vaughn?
Hi, it's actually Vishal over here. I'm Vanessa's husband. I would really like to thank everyone from DPS for serving the community well for so long, and people like Scott for 18 years. This is not about leaving DPS behind. And anyone who's bought a house in the past 3 years, you don't get held hostage by a realtor to put an offer down and buy a house in 7 days. That was just not the right thing. I think public is just not happy with that process. I don't think anyone doesn't want DPS to be in better position than what they are right now. And I don't think anyone's going to say no to that when you come up with a better plan. The residents just feel like they've been held hostage to put an offer. And Mr. Chance Jones knows very well how the realtor market works. And you just can't do stuff like this, putting people on spot to buy $3 million, $5 million cash. And second point being, even if you buy this property, are you going to move DPS right away in it? No, the building still has to be brought up to code. Does that any estimate? If it's anything like any bridge work going around the city, it's not going to happen in the next 8 months. So the haste to buy the building is just unprecedented. I don't see a need for that. I do see a need to address the DPS situation, but not this solution. And I wish the council people come up with a better solution that everyone appeases everyone. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Anybody else on Zoom would like to speak? Please press the raise hand button. There's no one else on Zoom, but I will also be tendering my resignation effective on December 31st.
I am not prepared to adjourn the meeting. I also am not able to make any motions. So I want to give an opportunity just for my colleagues, if you've been listening, to just think for a second before this meeting ends.
And I believe several of us are not in a position.
You're not allowed.
You have to be on the prevailing
Prevailing
side.
side.
So if anyone who voted no would like to move to reconsider.
Council members.
You can move to reconsider both resolutions if you'd like.
The pregnant pause.
I would like to move to reconsider resolution 2023-216 and resolution 2023-217.
There's a motion.
Support.
Did you support it? Oh, okay.
Oh, no, you were on you weren't on the prevailing side. You cannot. It has to be someone that voted.
Okay. Support.
Then moved and supported.
All in favor.
To reconsider and then
Yeah, then you gotta vote on.
all in favor to reconsider, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Oh,
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
No.
Mayor Brown,
yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson, Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
No.
with 5 yeses, the motion to reconsider has passed.
We have to read this whole thing again.
You can just say approve resolution. I move to approve resolution such and such. You don't have to read the whole thing. As read into the record.
Well, I can't.
I know you can.
Can I-
Before, you want to say something before that?
I'm sorry.
Well, now there's resolution.
There's nothing on the floor right now, so are you trying to make a comment before?
Can I ask a question? So a question I have is, this is probably a question for our broker. Given the fact that we've already voted no, what do you think the chances are that our offer is even still in play? Hmm?
So the way it's set right now, when asked by the city attorney not to deliver the contract, and it was just that I was tired because we were here till 12:30, that I didn't just email it the night of. I didn't send it. Right now, everything is prepared with the title company, and I understand the other side is making moves to getting everything prepared. I don't know that they're watching right now. So as of right now, they don't know that any of this has occurred.
Mhm.
That's the only bright side here. They're not under any contractual obligation until it's signed. So if you sign it tonight, to honor the deal that they have. And my phone's on silent, so.
I have another question, but Mr. Farr.
With a contract, a legal contract to purchase property, you need 3 things. You need an offer, you need an acceptance, and you need a consideration. When the offer was made, city council approved it and then they rejected the approval, but the offer, as far as I'm concerned, is still on the table. They have not withdrawn the offer. So if council wanted to accept the offer today, I believe they still could.
Thank you. And okay, and then my second question, just to, I have so many sorries, but just in terms of the staff that have already tendered their resignations today, just to wonder if reconsideration of this would in any way impact your decision. It's just a question. I understand you might have to think about it. So I understand, like, you might need to think. I'm just asking.
You actually have to put your resignation in writing, so technically no one's actually resigned. So.
This is not
A pure technicality.
not funny.
I believe your intent is true. It's fine if you don't feel like you want to answer at this point. But I would ask you to reconsider, please. Thank you.
I don't remember where we were.
Just need to vote on the resolutions now.
So they need to be reintroduced.
Can I move to reintroduce the resolution 2020
Because you weren't on the prevailing.
Yeah, you have to be on the prevailing side.
Even after the reconsider?
I thought we already.
We voted to.
Voted.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Then any one of the.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's.
Thank you. Yes, I thought that that's where we were. So I will move to reconsider 2023-2016. As
Consider, we just got.
Oh, I'm sorry. I move to approve. Can I do one at a time? So I move to approve 2023-2016.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. We're in discussion. Questions, comments? Well, I'll make some comments. My original vote was hard. And something that I heard in public comment resonates with me that I didn't think about, or not in the way that maybe I should have, around a flawed process overshadowing the people. 2 days ago, I went hard in the paint in that closed session about the people. And I have never gotten emotional in a council meeting like this, but I thought 2 days ago I was intense about our people. And I care about our people. And I have always cared about our people. To my own detriment, I have stood up for our people, our staff, our employees, as well as our community, but a lot for our staff. And I don't want anyone to think that it's about any one person or any two people, because it's not, although that would be devastating blows. And I hope that everyone, our employees who are here, just understand the impossibility of this decision and how hard it is in a position like this to make a choice that impacts us in different ways, no matter what you do. That there are so many unknowns and there is no true perfect answer or perfect or correct answer. There are flaws in both decisions, which is why in the past 48 hours, there have been 2 different ones. I still feel strongly that the amount for the building just kills me on the inside. The process was not good. It was not. And I make it a point to not disparage staff, to say negative things about staff, and I won't now. But what I will say is that we have problems in terms of how things happen here. I've been on council for 9 years. I've made mistakes. I've done some good things, I think, too. But across the board, we do have to tighten up in general. And I think that folks are gonna be mad no matter what we do. There was another point that was made about the money and how we have to find our own money to do things. And again, this is the people's money. It's not my money. And we are supposed to use the money to provide quality services, but to also take care of the people who provide the quality services. I am still struggling here. But my initial reaction to this on Tuesday, I brought up the people. And I knew this would go up. I knew this would turn up no matter what. It would blow up no matter what we did today. But a couple of things that were said in my own quiet reflection as I listen to public comment also kind of recalibrate me. And I don't typically go on long soliloquies about my thoughts in this space because I usually speak only when I need to, right? About what is important to say something about. And this is really important and scary and hard, but fear should not be what fuels us. And it has never been what fuels me, and I allowed that to fuel me tonight. And I am so sorry. Because that is not the type of leader that I am, and that is not who I have been in my career, in my day job, and I cannot sit here and be that person on council or as the mayor. We are gonna have to work really, really hard to make sure that this goes well. And that we do right by the city, do right by the staff, do right by our constituents, and by the residents. And I appreciate Councilmember Sweet for making the motion and Councilmember King for supporting it to reconsider, because I could not. This is probably the hardest decision I've ever made up here. That's all. Does anybody else have anything before we vote? Councilmember King.
I just want to say a no vote does not mean we don't want to do anything. I just want to make that statement. A no vote does not mean we do not care about the employees, because we do. That's it.
Thank you. Any further comments from council? Sorry, I almost. No? All right. Clerk Smith, you can call the roll on the 2023-216.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember J Simmons.
Yes.
Councilmember King,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen.
No.
5 yeses, the motion carries.
We need someone to put 2023-217 on the table. Huh? We already did.
We already removed it.
We already removed it.
I move to bring resolution number 2023-217, approving a budget amendment for the person 599 South Mansfield back to the table.
Wait, didn't we already do that both? We did both, so you just put it on.
Oh, the budget amendment, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, discussion. Clerk Smith. Oh, sorry, Councilmember D Simmons.
Sorry. Just one thing right quick is that I really love all of the outpouring of expertise and support that we've heard across these meetings, and I hope that continues. Just because we're putting this forward doesn't mean we don't still need that. If there's ways that we can do some things, then great, bring it forward, bring forward your expertise. This is also what we ask for in our commissions. People say that they have, come forward, be on our commissions, lean in, we still want you. Let this be an open invitation for all of the folks who said, oh, I have ideas, please, we want to hear them. That's great. Keep sharing them. This is not to say that we don't want them. It's to say that at this point, what we have in front of us, it may have been insufficient, but that doesn't mean it won't be helpful in the future and still to help support this project and for other future ones. And, come check out other ways to lean in and be involved, because that's what we need. We need folks to do that. And part of why we're in these situations is actually because, and I also just want to say that when we're talking about the majority of people, we have to understand we have heard from a very small percentage of the residents here. And a lot of the people who haven't come might not even know that this is going on, but they will have to share in the consequences of a reduction in services. And then they will be wondering, well, what happened? And why didn't the council do everything they can to make sure X, Y, and Z? But they wouldn't know it until it's already bad and gone. So I just want to name that. When we talk about the majority, it's not only the people who show up in this space. That is important. But there are other people who aren't in this space that we also have to hear from, and we also have to think about, and we also have to care about what they believe and see too. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments from council? All right, seeing none, clerksman.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
No.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
5 yeses, the motion carries.
Thank you. Before I adjourn, this does not change how this feels. And this is going to be hard no matter what. And so sure hope that we make this work. And we have our work cut out for us. And I hope that everyone, kind of like Desiree just requested, folks be participatory with us, that we all have to roll our sleeves up to make sure that we don't end up negatively impacted by this in terms of the decisions that we make during goal setting, during budget. That's all going to be very important. And so I know the city manager sent an email about our goals, and just be thinking about those as we move forward into the end of the year and into the new year. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. I really do appreciate all of the participation. This has been a lot, but we thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Bye.